This is the regular meeting of the City Council of the City of Cottonwood, Arizona, to be held August 16th, 2022 at 6 p.m. at the Council Chambers building. And let's ask our Deputy Clerk please to take the roll.
Councilmember Henry.
Here.
Councilmember Holz.
Here.
Councilmember Karat.
Present.
Councilmember Matthews is absent. Councilmember Wilden.
Here.
Vice Mayor Naren.
Here.
And Mayor Linsky.
Here. Okay, please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, thank you. And up next is a brief summary of current events by the Mayor, City Council, and/or City Manager. The public body does not propose, discuss, deliberate, or take legal action on any matter brought up during the summary unless the specific matter is properly noticed for legal action. Council members, do you have anything to report this evening? Go ahead.
I attended a rural conference forum conference in Winslow, I guess a couple weeks ago. I learned lots, and I'll be giving the council a brief summary on, I'll email it to everybody or email it to Ron. And we had Shannon Boone was there. She gave a presentation. The whole conference was excellent. I got lots of ideas for mostly our nonprofits, but some of the businesses in Cottonwood also I'll send some information too. Tricia Lewis was there, and Gary Davis, our senior planner, was there, and Cottonwood was mentioned several times throughout the conference, so all good.
Good. Thank you for being there. Anything else, Council? No? Okay, just a couple quick things to put on your calendar. First up is wanted to make you aware that the Friends of the Verde River is putting on a State of the Watershed Conference. This is coming up in September 26th or 29th. It'll be held at the Cliff Castle Casino. And you can go to friendsoftheverderiver.org to get your tickets and register for that. I've been asked to moderate a panel, so I'm going to lead a panel discussion on river cities in Arizona, challenges and opportunities. So I'm looking forward to that. I'm going to try to get some folks, well, I have got some folks from across the state who live in other river communities like ours. So that'll be on the 28th. So hope to see you there. And also, the Verde Valley Homeless Coalition, of which I serve on the board, is hosting its annual fundraiser dinner. This is on October 8th, Saturday, October 8th. This will be right across the street at the historic community clubhouse. It'll be a great event, excellent food. There will be music from a DJ. I'll be juggling chainsaws, so you don't want to miss that. Tickets are $75 for really excellent food. We're going to have local beer and wine as well, craft beer and wine from our local community. Of course, the proceeds go to an excellent cause, so I want everyone to put that on their calendar, please. Get your tickets. You can also buy a table. Okay, I'm going to keep talking about this until we sell all the tickets out. So if you want to shut me up, the way to do that is by buying the tickets, please. And I'll keep talking about, like I said. So that's all I have. Ron, what do you have?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, Council. A couple tonight. Staff conducted a pre-proposal conference today for the Construction Manager at Risk solicitation to construct the new City Hall. 8 contractors were represented at this meeting to ask questions regarding the solicitation and building history. Join us for the final dive-in movie at the outdoor pool on Saturday, August 20th. We will be enjoying the movie Finding Nemo. An entry is free with pizza available for purchase. Gates open at 7:45 p.m. Follow the Parks and Recreation Department Facebook for any updates. The public is invited to attend the First Street Sidewalk ribbon cutting on Tuesday, August 23rd at 9 a.m. The event will be held at the corner of First Street and Ironwood Circle. We look forward to seeing everyone at the celebration. The Cottonwood Historic Preservation Commission will be holding a special meeting tomorrow, August 17th at 6 p.m. here in the council chambers. Public is invited to attend. Tickets are also on sale for Thunder Valley Rally happening September 16th and 17th. Pre-purchase your weekend pass for just $25 online at the thundervalleyrallyaz.com. This year's headliners will be Steven Adler of Guns N' Roses on Friday night and the band Slaughter on Saturday night. Visit the TVR website for more information. Old Town Music and the Market will be returning the month of September on Friday evenings at 5 p.m. until dark. Enjoy live music and shopping with local vendors at the Old Town Activity Park. We look forward to seeing everyone there. The next blood drive hosted by the City of Cottonwood will be September 12th from 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. at the Public Safety Multipurpose Room located at 199 South 6th Street in Cottonwood. Sign up online at redcrossblood.org or via the blood donor app using the sponsor code CottonwoodAZ, or call 800 Red Cross to make your appointment. Often we have employees, strapping young people passing out during this event. So it's entertaining. So if you want to donate, come on over and sign up, and you might see some free excitement at this blood drive, but we're in a shortage. Donate blood. I was trying to figure out how to say that nicely, but it's fun. It can be very interesting. The Planning and Zoning Commission will be holding a special meeting on Thursday, September 8th at 6 p.m. in the council chambers. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you. All right, call to the public's up next. This portion of the agenda is set aside for the public to address the council regarding an item that is not listed on the agenda for discussion. However, the council cannot engage in discussion regarding any item that is not officially listed on the agenda for discussion and/or action. And comments are limited to a 3-minute time period. There's yellow forms in the back, folks. If you'd like to address the council, now's your opportunity. Fill out a form. Put your name on the form so I know who to call up. There's no name on this one, but you want to discuss Officer Rep in Northern Arizona Hospice. So whoever belongs to that, come on up. Introduce yourself and let us know what's on your mind. Thanks for being here.
So my name's Christy T. Camp, and I'm a social worker with Northern Arizona Hospice. And I'm here asking you guys to maybe consider giving Officer Rep with Cottonwood PD maybe some sort of award. He was amazing. So people think of hospice as a place. It's not. We are where you are. So if your home is no home at all, that's where we go. And I had a patient who's lived for 30 years off the grid out in our desert, loving it, loved his life. And cirrhosis obviously is what he died of. And it wasn't pretty, but as he got closer to death, he moved over here to Riverfront Park, and our nurses and our team would visit him at the tables there at the park. And he no longer could make it back out to the desert at night. So he would find a little tree to sleep under. So I got to thinking, I don't want this guy to get arrested. So I went to Cottonwood PD and I said, who's in charge of outreach? And Officer Rep, not only did he go out to the park and meet my guy, but he continued to visit him daily. And as he was really close to death, I got an email from Officer Rep, and he had CC'd Pauline Jackson with Catholic Charities and said, let's get him a room at Little Daisy. And Danica over there was happy to help. And he made that happen for us. So we just want him to get some sort of recognition. I know it's not very controversial, so I'm hoping you guys will consider that. That's it.
Thank you for coming in and bringing this to our attention. We appreciate it. Yeah, thank you. All right, if there's nobody else, then we're going to go ahead and close the floor and move on to the approval of the minutes of the regular meeting of August 2nd, 2022. And I move to approve those minutes.
I have something to say about the minutes, if I may.
Sure, yes.
At the last meeting, including these minutes, last architects, we approved them to be the architects for our new city hall. One of the questions I asked was, what's a comparable city hall that you've built? They said it was Surprise, which is not correct. It was El Mirage. I just want to correct the minutes. They came up to me later. It's not in the minutes, so we're okay there. But I just want to correct the minutes that it was El Mirage that they worked on.
Okay. All right.
Second.
Okay, Mayor made the motion. Councilmember Wilden seconded it. All in favor?
Aye.
All right, minutes are approved. And we roll into unfinished business. Just one item this evening is ordinance number 714, amending section 2.08, 120.f of the Cottonwood Municipal Code regarding the call to the public portion of the council's regular meeting agenda, second and final reading. Again, we've discussed this before. I don't think there's anything new to add from your end. Council, any other discussion on this item?
I have no discussion. I like that we're doing this and being proactive to reflect what our current procedures are instead of what it was antiquated on the books. And our clerk did say she updated the date already on the ordinance from the council packet, so I don't have anything else on the ordinance.
All right, great. Then I'll entertain a motion.
I move to approve ordinance number 714.
Second.
Okay, Councilmember Henry made the motion and the Vice Mayor seconded it. Let's have a roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Henry.
Yes.
Councilmember Holes.
Yes.
Councilmember Karat.
Yes.
Councilmember Wilden.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Naren.
Yes.
and Mayor Linsky.
Yes. All right, motion passes. Thank you. Let's have our deputy clerk read ordinance number 714 by title only.
An ordinance of the mayor and the city council of the city of Cottonwood, Yavapai County, Arizona, amending Title II, Chapter 2.08.120, Meetings, Order of Business, Letter F, Call to the Public of the Cottonwood Municipal Code, ordinance number 714.
Great, thank you. All right, consent agenda is next. The following items are considered to be routine and non-controversial by the council and will be approved by one motion. There will be no separate discussion of these items unless a council member or a citizen so requests, in which case the item will be removed from the consent agenda. So we have 9 items this evening. I'll read them all out loud here. Item 1 is professional services agreement with Front Burner Media LLC for tourism promotion and destination marketing organization services. Item 2, designation of the city and Visit Cottonwood as the city's destination marketing, organization through the Rural Marketing Cooperative with the Arizona Office of Tourism. Item 3, renewal of emergency dispatch agreements with the Town of Jerome Police and Fire Departments, Sedona Fire District, Verde Valley Fire District, Verde Valley Ambulance Company, Town of Clarkdale Police Department, and the Copper Canyon Medical and Fire District. Item 4, purchase of backup generators for well sites 2-1, 4-1, 4, and 7. Item 5 is waiver and procurement policy and authorization to purchase a 1-ton dump truck for the Public Works Department based on quotes received rather than competitive sealed bids or proposals. Item 6, purchase of replacement police department radios for Motorola Solutions. Item 7 is professional services agreement with DIBBLE Engineering for on-call airport engineering services. Item 8, resolution number 3146, approving an agreement with the Arizona Department of Transportation Aeronautics Group for funding of the Cottonwood Municipal Airport Taxiway A rehabilitation project design. Item 9 is resolution number 3147, appointing a member to the Planning and Zoning Commission. Is there an item that a council member or citizen would like to have pulled from this consent agenda? You're standing up, sir, but I don't know if you want something pulled. Are you?
I have a question about what you just quoted.
Why don't you come on up to the podium, sir? Is there an item that you'd like to have pulled from this consent agenda? Is there an item that you would like to have pulled from the consent agenda?
I just have a question on the taxiway.
Okay, well, we'll go ahead and make a motion to approve items 1 through 9, accepting 8. And we'll talk about that here in a second.
Okay, thank
Okay.
you.
Mm-hmm.
Second.
Okay, so we have a motion to approve made by the mayor. We have a second by Councilmember Henry, and all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, so let's have our deputy clerk read resolution number 3147 by title only, please.
Resolution number 3147, a resolution of the mayor and city council of the city of Cottonwood, Yavapai County, Arizona, appointing Robert Nelson a member of the Planning and Zoning Commission and establishing his term of office.
Great, thank you. And let's take item 8 and get a brief presentation on that, and then we'll answer your questions, sir. Sir, before you come up, we're going to have Mr. Tripp introduce the item, and then we'll get your question answered.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Jeff Tripp, Airport Manager. This is a request to approve the ADOT grant to fund the design phase for the Taxiway A rehabilitation project. The pavements and the existing asphalt are reaching the end of their useful life and need to be rebuilt. And at that time, we're also looking at some other upgrades to the infrastructure to the taxiway based on the configuration of how the taxiway intersections are laid out. One of the things we want to do is take away the straight access from the ramp to the taxiway to the runway. That's something the FAA does nationally, so you make it so a plane, if they are not paying attention, or doesn't end up on a runway by missing a turn. We'll also be looking at putting in runway lighting, taxiway lighting. Right now, only the runway is lit, so we'll be looking at doing some upgrades to the lighting system and the markings. So it's a pretty straightforward product, and this is just the design phase at this point.
Okay, thank you very much. Sir, did that answer your question, or do you have a more specific question?
No, the question I have is on the MTO, which is the weight that the taxiway can handle. You're going to, currently, if I'm correct, the MTO or the weight limit on the taxiway and the runway is around 12,000 pounds. You're going to be changing that on the taxiway to approximately a little over 36,000 pounds. My question is, why, if we have an airport, a runway, that's rated at 12,500 pounds or so, and a taxiway for 12,500 pounds. Why do we need a taxiway? Why do we need to spend the money on a taxiway for 36,000 pound aircraft?
Okay, we'll get your question answered. Thank you, sir.
Mayor and Council, as you can see on the council report, that we're not asking for a 30,000 pound taxiway or runway right now. The runway pavement strains are listed at 4,000 single wheel. We're asking to bring things up to 12,500, which is a standard weight that can handle most general aviation aircraft. So we're not doing anything to bring in a larger aircraft. This is not going to increase the type of aircraft that can come in, for example, Gulfstreams. These are aircraft that are not coming here now, so this is simply just bringing the pavements into more standard, kind of the industry standard.
Okay. All right. Thank you, sir.
May I respond?
No, sir. I believe we answered your question. Thank you. Any other discussion, council? No? Okay. I'll go ahead and move then to approve resolution number 3146, approving an agreement with the Arizona Department of Transportation Aeronautics Group for funding of the Cottonwood Municipal Airport Taxiway A Rehabilitation Project Design.
Second.
Okay, Mayor made the motion. Councilmember Holst seconded it. Roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Henry,
Yes.
Councilmember Holst,
Yes.
Councilmember Karat,
Yes.
Councilmember Weldon,
Yes.
and Vice Mayor Naren,
Yes.
and Mayor Linsky.
Yes. Thank you. Let's have you read resolution number 3146 by title only, please.
Resolution number 3146, a resolution of the Mayor and City Council of the City of Cottonwood, Arizona, approving an airport development reimbursable grant agreement with the Arizona Department of Transportation Multimodal Planning Division Aeronautics Group for aid in financing the Taxiway A Rehabilitate Design project at the Cottonwood Municipal Airport.
Right. Thank you. And sir, any other questions, you can please direct them to city manager. We'll get anything else answered for you. Thank you. All right, new business. We have a lot going on this evening, so we're going to roll through this as quick as we can. Following items are for council discussion, consideration, and possible legal action. First up is public hearing regarding the proposed increase to Cottonwood Municipal Airport rates, fees, and charges.
Did you send it to me? Sorry.
Evening, Mayor and Council. Jeff Tripp, Airport Manager. I'm bringing forth the airport's recommendations to update our current airport rates and fees. The basis for the rates and fees was taking all of our various airport documents, primarily our airport minimum operating standards, which Council approved back in 2017, our leases and any other operating policies that I could find, to try to put things into a more easy to find format, so we kind of can in a very quick format show what our charges are. I've also had a number of things I wanted to try to update, either through new fees or modifying existing fees to help fund our operating costs. Does council actually have all the packet here? I know this one's not going to be easy to read. What I'm going to go through is I've broken down the basic one-page rates and fees into smaller sections so we can go through it. I don't know if any council wants to actually have the packet. I do have copies here.
This is included in our packet, so we
Okay.
have it.
First off, you can see on the airport ground rates and facility leases, this is primarily the airport and the business park. Now that's already set by the lease itself from 1983. We'll also take a look at where our airport ground rates are $125 per acre per year for unimproved ground in the air park and the business park. And then the improved ground lease is the penny per square foot per month. Getting into the fixed base operators and the self-fueling permittees, again, looking at negotiating a rent with an FBO coming in for either ground rent or facility rent. Operational fees and the existing rates and fees we already have. The 1.5% of gross revenues would be an annual report due April 15th. Transit overnight parking fees, rather than doing a percentage of collection, we're looking to split the fees 50-50 with the FBO. Fuel float fees remain at 10 cents, and I am asking to do a new fee for the fuel permit administration fee, so the amount of time that myself and fire marshal will take to review a permit, do the inspections. We want to try to recover some of our costs there. So I'm recommending a $500 fee for an FBO, assuming they would typically have more equipment. Getting down to the operational non-FBO fees, these will be for people who want to do self-fueling. Again, we still have the 10 cent per gallon cost, and then a permit administration fee of $250. Now, our airport commission chair did ask if we could consider doing a $100 per piece of equipment, and we can still go back on that, but the challenge is if somebody has 3 or 4 pieces of equipment, they'll be paying more. So right now, I think $250 would be recommended for the types of operators we have for non-FBO fueling. Any questions on the first page, Council?
How many do we have up there that are fueling without use of the FBO?
Right now, we have 4 identified self-fuelers, and I'm in the process of working to get those folks under the fuel permits.
Okay.
I had a question.
Sure.
Just how was the amount of the non-commercial fee calculated? Because what I've heard, and I haven't done any independent research, was that other airports in Arizona charge closer to that $100 mark for an annual permit fee. So do we have justification for, one, is that true? And then, or what are your thoughts on that? And then 2, how do we justify our higher fee, if it is higher?
Sure, it really depends airport to airport. I think some of the larger airports will be charging more because you have just higher numbers of fuel tanks and personnel and equipment. So I was taking a guess, taking a look at how much time I think I'll be spending on reviewing the permit process to make sure that the equipment is inspected, that we have their insurances, that we have their certifications, their training records for an FBO. And then we do a similar thing for the non-fuel. So this is kind of a guess between what my time would be, along with the fire marshal, to do our research, throwing the risk manager's time to verify the insurance. So this is just a guess to say, okay, here's about a reasonable fee for the type of work that we're doing.
Do you have an opinion about other smaller, airports of Cottonwood size, what their annual permit fee is for this, for the non-commercial?
I'd have to go back and look at particular airports. I know that there's a range from $100 to $500. It really depends upon the airport. So I can always go back, and if you'd like to pull that one, I can go back and get a listing of what all the different airports are charging.
I'd be personally curious, I don't know what the rest of council thinks, just because that is what I was told, and I don't want to be too far out of line with what other comparable airports were charging. So personally, I would appreciate that, but I don't know what other council members think.
Mr. Mayor, Councilmember Henry, this is the first reading, first hearing, so we can come back with that information and get that to you. I can tell you that most fuel permits, several hours of Mr. Tripp's and Mr. Contreras, your fire marshal's time, depending on their responsiveness to providing insurance information, it can be several hours of your HR director's time, your risk manager's time. So 250 times those 4 employees, 3 employees times 2 or 3 hours. The 250 seems reasonable, but I think we do want to be in line with other airports. So we can absolutely get that information and bring it back to the next public hearing.
Okay. We appreciate that. Yes.
Quick question on the facility lease rate. Is that for the hangars that are out there?
Yes, we have the ground lease rate if it's going to be bare ground. If it's an existing facility that the city owns, in this case, we only own we own 2 hangars. We have the N hangar, which already has its own rates and fees as part of the lease, and then we have the B hangar, which we are in the process of leasing out to the FBO. So if that becomes available, if we wanted to rent that out, or if in the future the city built additional storage hangars or larger box hangars, this is the type of rate that would be covered under.
I'm not sure if this is appropriate now, but we have a significant wait list for hangars. There's like 32 people waiting for hangars. Is there an option to build more hangars?
So, Mr. Tripp, if I can answer that, Mayor, Councilmember Wilden, that'll be coming to council in a future date. We do have plans to RFP, have the private sector build it, and then lease it back from us. So, yeah, we have plans to bring something to council in the future.
Okay. All right, thank you. Carry on.
Okay. Next, getting into the Specialized Aviation Service Organizations, or SASOs. These are all the non-FBO business operations that could be conducted on the airport. Again, most of these are already existing fees within the minimum standards. I did try to, did want to see about increasing the percentage, and then on one or two fees changing from a percentage to an actual just per fee. For example, on the mobile maintenance and repair, I think it was actually, no, that wasn't the one. There was one, I forget which one, was a percentage of gross, but if they're only coming on infrequently, that would be a minuscule amount. So certain ones I wanted to get to a per use fee. For the mobile maintenance repair, I did want to bump that from $10 to $25. Like I said, the aircraft washing and detailing, again, going from a percentage to a flat fee. And then everything else was mostly just bumping it up to 2.5% from a 1.5% initially. And then the non-tenant commercial operator application fee that's out in the existing minimum standards document. Any questions from Committee or Council?
Questions? No?
Getting into the administrative fees, taking a look at some of the fees we're already charging. The non-aeronautical parking permit, right now at $52.50. That's about $18.50 a month. So I wanted to bump that up to $1 a day or $30 a month. So it'd be $90 per quarter. We're keeping our access card and parking sticker at $25. Our wait list and our covered, for our hangers and our covered tie downs, keeping those at $50. There's no need to change those. The next set of fees, one of the challenges we have at the airport when Wiseman Aviation pulled out is that we have no fees in place to charge for transient overnight parking. So we're not collecting any revenue right now when people are flying in and staying multiple days. So all of these different transient fees are a per night fee that are just designed to help get some revenue from the people that are using the airport, particularly if they're not buying fuel. So you can see we're going, breaking up by single engine, twin engine, piston, turbine jet aircraft. And then the helicopters are breaking out single rotor and twin rotor because during fire season you might see sometimes some of the larger twin rotor Forest Service helicopters will come in, so we'll be able to accommodate charging them. They also take up more space on the ramp. A transit parking fee for vehicles and equipment, that's primarily going to be for firefighting equipment. A lot of the helicopter operators will operate out in the field, so if they come to the airport they might bring their tanker trucks and their support trucks. This will again allow us to charge them a reasonable fee, similar to what I was doing over at the Prescott Airport for years and supporting their operations. Also establishing transit overnight fees for the B hangar. Now this will only be in place if the city is operating the hangar itself. If it's being leased to the FBO, then the FBO can charge whatever rates actually they want. These will be fees that the city would charge if we are assuming the operations. Getting down to the bottom of the list, the runway and taxiway incursion fine. This is something I've put in place at other airports, and this is just one more tool to try to keep people off the runway and taxiway. I recognize when I got here that I've been told, challenged with there's not a tower here, not a lot of people out there. At times people are driving cars, walking their dogs, riding their bikes. I think we put a stop to most of that in my 9 months. But again, I just wanted to take one more thing to remind our tenants that you do not need to go onto the movement area unless you're actually in your plane. So these fines will be at my discretion depending on the severity. If somebody makes an inadvertent entry onto the taxiway, that's one thing. If somebody's out there driving up and down, that's going to be something else. This also comes into play with our airport security program. We ask the tenants to wait for the gates to close behind them. And I hear recently that somebody did not do that and a motorcycle ended up driving on the taxiway. So again, it's just trying to reinforce to our tenants that for your own security, please make sure the gates are closed. And then finally, looking to get some document transaction fees into place. Right now, I'm doing a lot of work on catching up all the air park and business park leases. Right now, there's no fee in place, so all the work that we're doing as staff, myself, city managers, city attorney, we're not recovering any costs on that. So we're trying to get some fees into place for if it's something that's done at my level, city manager's level, or something that has to go to council that takes more work.
Can you let me know how this will affect the assignment or reassignment of some of the leases up there?
This is what this is intended to help recover. So we're still spending a lot of time when we're doing the assignments on a staff level to get things processed through all the different people that need to be signed, and just help try to get a little bit of cost recovery.
And I understand that we've pivoted towards having the city manager be able to process most of those at this point. So we'll be looking at a $50 fee to reassign.
That is correct, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, Mayor Council, that's really what I have for the rates and fees at this time, if there are no more questions.
Okay. All right, well, this is a public hearing, so if there's folks in the audience that would like to address the council on this item, you're more than welcome to at this point. We'd ask you just fill out a form, introduce yourselves. This will be coming back at a future date as well, so there's more opportunity for you to weigh in on this. All right. Yeah, I'll just say I think I agree with Councilmember Henry. It'd be nice to know that some of our fees are consistent with other municipal airports of our size, but otherwise I think this is a good step forward, making sure we recoup some of our costs up there. Yeah. Okay. We'll go ahead and close the floor then to the public on this hearing and move on to the next item, which is item 2 under new business, recommendation, consideration, and award of fiscal year 22-23 community agency grants.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Jeff Cook, Accounting Manager. Tonight I'll be presenting the results of the fiscal year 2023 Outside Agency Funding Program. Just a little overview of what we'll go over tonight. Like many years before, we'll recap the adjustments that were made to the program last year. We'll go over those scoring criteria changes, the proposals received, the review committee recommendations, as well as the summary of the programs that are funded by those recommendations. So last year, and guided by council, we made a few changes to the program. We're in year 4 currently of this, so last year was new in the fact that we put an emphasis placed on programs that were geared toward helping our vulnerable populations. There was an additional $50,000 budgeted for this program, totaling $150,000. And we began to award bonus points for collaborative proposals. And so this is a little look at the scoring criteria. We added a 5-point bonus for collaborative applications. And that was really the only change. And the committee knew that the overarching principle was that we're helping vulnerable populations. And so this year we received 14 applications on time. We had 1 late application and it wasn't opened due to the terms of the grant. Total funding requested was just over $322,000, and as I had stated before, program budget of $150,000. And that's pretty small. So summary, I'm just going to go down the line 1 through 10, summarizing a few bullet points of each of the programs that are funded. I can't really touch them all or else we'd probably be here all night, but ranked 1 this year was the Verde Valley Homeless Coalition. They requested $1,700 for replacement fencing and screening around the main entrance of their location. And so their current screening is torn right now, and this screening allows the services to be offered in a safe private space and help with confidentiality, also maintaining aesthetics coming into Old Town. And so their request was fully recommended tonight at $1,700 by the review committee. The next was a joint application between the Verde Valley Trail Fund and the Cyclist Coalition. We funded work to support this program in the past. It's phase 3, but it's the second field season for blowout wash. Sorry, I'm getting a little mixed up there. So the proposed program funding would augment Forest Service funding for the 22-23 field season for phase 3 of blowout wash. And this is for 3 to 5 miles of the new Copper Tree Trail. There's some gate guards and some other things that are going to happen. Rehab of land in areas where illegal routes are used along the corridor. The amount requested was $15,000, and tonight's recommendation is the full $15,000. Tied for second place this year was Manzanita Outreach. they recently proposed on their MO PACs and the assistance to school teachers. So they had requested over $26,000. Tonight's recommendation is $20,000. This will help fill a budgetary gap for operational costs, serving 11 schools, 265 teachers, over 4,000 students with classroom snacks, consumables, and consumable school supplies. Ranked fourth by the committee was also a collaborative proposal. It was Verde Valley Wheel Fund and the Cyclist Coalition, another program that's been funded by this process in the past. It's for a certified coach for the mountain bike club at the middle school at Mountain View Prep. And also some additional storage capacity at two of the schools, Cottonwood Community School and Dr. Daniel Bright. Wheel Fund also has 6 programs designed to serve a diverse community of the Verde Valley youth at no charge. So the request was $7,500. Tonight's recommendation is the full amount. Ranked fifth was the Verde Valley Wine Consortium, whose funding would be used to create a Verde Valley Wine Trail mobile passport app and to purchase auxiliary equipment for wine events to include tables, chairs, generator, sound system, and some other small items. The app, which was kind of the highlight of their proposal, would streamline the process for what modern consumers would expect rather than paper, and kind of brings us with the times. Rank 6 is the Old Town Mission. This proposal was just to support general operations, the food pantry, Wednesday evening market, emergency food boxes, home delivery, community meals, and many of the other great things that the mission provides. The request was $30,000. Tonight's recommendation is $18,630. Verde Valley Caregivers Coalition was ranked 7th. The proposed funding allocation would support a demand response transportation program that goes above and beyond the limitations of an ADA paratransit to provide a comprehensive service for the elderly. So this service would deliver 1,000 trips per month for Cottonwood elderly neighbors to access health care, shopping trips for food and home supplies, and also trips out of town for specialty healthcare services. The amount requested was $20,000. Tonight's recommendation is $10,000. Ranked 8 was the Science Vortex, whose requested funding would be used to coordinate a regional 2023 Verde Valley SciTech Festival. This festival would have at least 30 free events open to all public, and they had 450 attendees in February of 2022, looking to increase that number obviously in 2023, but that's still a pretty decent turnout coming fresh out of the COVID era with that stuff. So the amount requested was $5,170, and this committee is recommending the full amount. Ranked 9th was the Verde Valley Senior Center. We're all familiar with the Meals on Wheels program for homebound senior citizens, vulnerable population in the community. Over 40% of these meals are delivered in the city of Cottonwood. Like everyone else, they're dealing with increased costs in all supplies, food, fuel, etc. And $100,000 was requested. Tonight's recommendation is $55,000. And ranked 10th was Friends of the Verde River. They're going to coordinate with the Science Vortex and Cottonwood Oak Creek School District to implement the 3rd annual Bio Blitz, which I believe has been kind of helped by this program for a couple of years in the past. This engages local community members and students to learn about plants, wildlife, and the Verde River system, continuing to add inventory of species to their data collection, which is done through smartphones. It's a free community event to educate and increase culture of conservation in the Verde Valley. The amount requested under that program was $10,000, and tonight's recommendation is $6,000. So, The recommended funding amounts presented tonight allow the city to fund 10 of 14 applicants that were turned in on time, supporting a wide range and diverse needs for residents of the city of Cottonwood, and also assisting at an emphasis on vulnerable populations. And with that, I'll entertain any questions from the council.
Questions, council, for Mr. Cook? Thanks. No? Okay. All right. We have a couple folks here that would like to address us, I believe, on this item. So let's bring up Diana Wiss. And I'm sorry if I'm not pronouncing. She just stepped out to use the restroom. Oh, okay. Then let's hear from Ken Wood. Wait. No, I'm so sorry. Is this on this item, sir? Mr. Wood? Yeah. Would you like to address council on this item that we're discussing now?
It's not, but I don't think it's this item. This item is grants?
Yes.
Grants.
If he was here to speak during call to the public, he'll need to come back at the next regular meeting to address us during call to the public. We won't be able to hear from him this evening, unfortunately. Or he could email, sir, you could email the council or our manager. Okay. Okay, so let's have a discussion, council, while we wait for Ms. Wiss to come back. I'll say I'm pleased that this is a clear cross-section of our community that we're able to fund. That's one thing that makes me happy. One thing that doesn't make me happy is the $320,000 worth of need, and we're only meeting 150. But I think it's great that we've put this program in place, bolstered the program, and again, I think we're hitting a lot of the elements of our strategic plan, which I know will pay dividends by having our local nonprofits help us out. Reaching our
How
goal.
much did we raise the amount? 50,000? Okay, well, that's well needed, so thank you.
Well,
Yes.
if we have time for some discussion, I didn't have any questions, but I did want to say thanks to the committee because the applications, or at least the points allocated, do seem to really reflect the scoring criteria, and it shows, at least to me, that a lot of time and thought went into the scoring. And just echoing the mayor, we always wish we could give more, but we do have a program. We've put a limit to the program, and I do appreciate you making the tough scoring decisions and then bringing these recommendations. I don't have any proposed changes to the recommendations personally.
Okay, thank you. Anything else, council?
Can I just go ahead and make a motion?
Yes. Yes.
Is that okay?
Yeah.
Okay. I move to approve the following funding amount for the fiscal year 2023 outside agency funding program, subject to approval of the final form of the respective funding agreements by the city attorney.
I'll second that. Councilmember Wilden made the motion. Mayor seconded it. Roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Henry.
Yes?
Councilmember Hulse.
Yes.
Councilmember Barat.
Yes.
Councilmember Wilden.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Naren.
Yes.
And Mayor Alinsky.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay, great. All right. Moving on. Item 3 is ordinance number 717, amending the zoning ordinance to allow 6-foot walls and fences within the required front yard setback in residential zoning districts under a conditional use permit and with certain additional restrictions. And this is the first reading.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, Council. Scott Ellis, Community Development Director. As mentioned, Ordinance 717 is a request to amend Section 404J regarding fence heights. Sorry, I'll wait. Go ahead, sir. Right now, the ordinance allows up to 6-foot fences in a backyard and side yard. Last year, we changed the side yard to include corner lots. So even if it was a street side, you could go along the street with a solid 6-foot fence.
doesn't allow it within the front yard setback, meaning that depending on what residential zone you're in, you have a certain setback that your building has to be, which in turn means your fence has to be that far back as well if you want it 6 feet. Right now, you can put a 4-foot fence, whether it's solid or see-through, in that front yard setback. So what this proposal is to keep only 4 feet of it solid at the very front of the property line, and the other 2 feet can be see-through. So you will get a 6-foot fence, but only the top 2 feet can be, the top 2 feet has to be see-through. Only the first 4 can be solid. We did take this to the Planning Commission with 3 options. One was to just permit it in the zoning ordinance staff level review on a fence permit, take it to design review to the Planning Commission, or require a conditional use permit. They elected to recommend to council that it be done with a conditional use permit to avoid, I'll show you some of the pictures here, something like that, where you have the 6-foot chain link fence, and since you have to keep the top 2 feet open, that's what you might get on the solid part. That is not in Cottonwood. That is another local jurisdiction that does allow it, and so that's potentially what you could get if it's just permitted by right in the zoning ordinance. On the flip side of that, if it does go to the Planning and Zoning Commission, you potentially get something like that. So this is from a recent apartment complex here in town that the Planning Commission did approve. It did have to go to design review as a project as a whole, but that is an example of letting them review that proposal. I do need to point out that per state law, the legislative body must consider the impact of an amendment on the cost of constructing a house. As you know, most of the amendments we brought doesn't affect that. Conditional use permit will. For single family, it's $350. For multifamily, it is $800 for that conditional use permit. And with that, I can answer any questions council may have.
Council, do you have any questions for Mr. Ellis?
No, not a question, just the fact that I'm with the conditional use permit, just for the reasons that we've seen.
Okay. Any others? Councilmember Karat?
So if because don't they have to fill out a permit for the fence anyway?
Yes,
So,
a fence permit is required.
so wouldn't the design of that be included in the initial permit, not necessarily a CUP?
Mr. Mayor, Councilmember Karat, not necessarily, because as staff, we can't dictate that design. We can just go with what the code allows, and it does allow certain materials, but we couldn't prevent this at the staff level.
Okay. And has this come forward to your office before with requests to build a 6-foot tall fence in the front yard setbacks?
We have had questions on it, Mr. Mayor, but not a lot, not frequently. It's not something we get often.
Okay.
Over the years that I've been here, we have had some, yeah.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor, can I add 2 things for council's consideration? He said 3 options to P&Z. There was actually a 4th, and that was to keep the current code as is. They did discuss that. They felt like something needed to be addressed because they felt like this question does come up periodically, and so they didn't want to go with the no option. And then I believe Mr. Ellis checked with public safety to see if they had a concern with this, and I believe their answer was no concern.
They do not, as long as the top 2 feet is open. If it was solid 6 feet all the way, they would not be okay with that.
Okay. All right. Okay. Council, does this seem like something you want to bring back for a vote?
So I'm not in favor of solid 6-foot fences in front yards. It, to me, gives the appearance of a closed-off, walled-in, unwelcoming community. So in general, I don't like the look in general. I can see that there are perhaps need or times when a homeowner does have a need, perhaps with a dog that can jump or other circumstances that are unique to that particular property or homeowner. I don't know exactly what the CUP would look at. If, our current criteria, I thought it couldn't be something the owner brought to the property. So I don't know, if that will address that particular concern. But I do agree with the recommendation for approval of this through a CUP process on a unique case-by-case basis.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, Councilmember Henry, that's what the commission felt as well. Historically, in the planning field, that's exactly why you don't see a lot of places allowing 6-foot fences. You get that fortified neighborhood feeling. If every house going down the street had a 6-foot solid fence, there's no neighborhood view, no aesthetics. That's what the commission considered as well. But with that, they also considered what you just said about perhaps dogs, some properties. The conditional use permit process also requires us to notify neighbors within 300 feet of that property, so neighbors would get a chance to weigh in if they so chose to come to that P&Z meeting.
Okay. Well, I agree with Councilmember Henry on this. I don't like the appearance of a fortified front yard, and there may be circumstances where it's necessary. So I appreciate the flexibility. So I think it seems like we could bring it back for a second vote, or for a vote, second time for a vote. Yep.
Thank you.
Is there anyone here in the audience tonight that would like to speak to council on this item, this ordinance? No? All right. You'll get another chance. So let's have our deputy clerk please read ordinance number 717 by title only, please.
Ordinance number 717, an ordinance of the mayor and city council of the city of Cottonwood, Yavapai County, Arizona, amending the zoning ordinance by amending section 404, general provisions, letter J, walls and fences.
Okay, thank you. All right, fourth item under new business is proposed letter of intent with Verde Santa Fe Wastewater Company and AGS LLC regarding wastewater collection and treatment for the 89 and Vine development located at SR 89A and Cornville Road. I believe we have Mr. Whitmer with us this evening for this item. Evening.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and Council. My name is Tom Whitmer. I'm the Utilities Director for the City of Cottonwood. It gives me great pleasure to bring this letter of intent to you this evening because it shows that we're making progress on something that has been underway since the 1987 time period. As most of you are aware, there's been a proposed development in place for approximately 640 acres at the northeast corner of Cornville Road and Highway 89. It's been most recently known as the 89 and Vine subdivision. Well, for the past couple of years, we've been working with Sunbelt Holdings, who is looking at potentially developing that property, and we've been working with them on water and wastewater infrastructure possibilities for that site. As you know, if you're going to develop 640 acres of new residential and commercial properties out there, there's going to be a generation of a lot of effluent. So over the past 2 years, we've been looking at a number of different scenarios to handle the actual treatment of that effluent and the disposal of it in some way, means, or shape or form. Most recently here, and when I say most recently, perhaps in the last 3 or 4 months, we've kind of come upon a concept that would include utilizing the wastewater treatment plant at Verde Santa Fe. Rather than construct a new plant on site, we looked at that plant here, or we, Sunbelt did, and identified that there was some potential room or capacity in their permit there to actually take advantage, at least in the early stages of the 89 and Vine development, to handle the effluent that would be generated on that property. So over the last couple months, we've had a number of meetings between the city, Sunbelt Holdings, and the owners of Verde Santa Fe Wastewater Company, or the treatment plant there. And we've kind of fallen upon this new concept that would basically call on Sunbelt to actually put up monies to upgrade that plant, the existing plant that's there, increase the capacity of it, and also the quality of treatment that's currently occurring at that site. The responsibility for the city of Cotton would be nothing more than to oversee the operation and maintenance of the collection system throughout the development itself. In essence, what would be occurring is then we would be providing bulk effluent to that wastewater treatment plant that would be operated by the current owners of the Verde Santa Fe wastewater treatment plant. And it would be their responsibility for the permitting and disposal of that effluent after the plant was upsized and increased to sufficient capacity to handle the effluent that be generated by the 89 and Vine subdivision. You know, there's a number of ways to look at this. You know, from the city's perspective, the city will not have to take over the operation and maintenance of a new wastewater treatment plant that would have to be built if it was going to be built on the property itself. So that, on one hand, that's beneficial to the city. The overriding question that many have thought of is what about the resource itself, the effluent? As most of you have listened to me over the years say, you know, effluent is perhaps one of the most valuable resources that's underutilized in the country at this point in time. And it's also a resource that we own, if it's ours at least, and it can't be taken away by anybody unless we discharge it. So you kind of look at it and say, well, we're giving up potentially, you know, 500,000 gallons a day at build out of 89 and Vine if we do this. And so is that a resource that we want to give up? In reality, it's really not a resource that we would be giving up, because right now there's an agreement in place between the wastewater treatment plant and the golf course over there to take every bit of effluent that they use for irrigation. Right now, their pump is just like our pump is running 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, trying to meet the demands of both the golf course and the development there. So what this would do with the increase in effluent that be provided down to that plant, it would offset the requirement of at least the golf course well to continue pumping, which is a benefit to us and our wells in our development plans for future water resources for that area. Based upon that, city staff has looked at this pretty closely and says, this is not a bad idea. And so what we did is we put together a three-party letter of intent that kind of outlines the concept of how it would work. There's a lot of hurdles that have to be overcome, but this at least is an indication that the city is on board with this concept, and it helps drive this project, continues driving this project forward, rather than having it sit on hold forever. And with that, I'll open it up for any questions. And I do have members of Sunbelt Holdings here tonight that if I can answer any questions, I'm sure they'd be more than happy to stand up here and tell you what they think as well. Or if you have any questions specifically to them.
All right, councils, do we have any questions right now for Mr. Whitmer? Yes.
The current plant that's there now that serves the area, Verde Santa Fe, are they good stewards, or have we had problems with them at all?
We, the city, have not had any problems with them. They have had their issues with their ability to meet some of their permit requirements in the past. And that's one of the things that Sunbelt is mandated, that if this concept goes forward and is implemented, that the new plant, the increase in capacity, also includes the improvement in the treatment processes itself, such that it will be elevated to an A+ quality standard.
So Sunbelt is going to be overseeing that? Is that the running of the plant or
They will not be
not?
overseeing the operations. They will be overseeing just they will be responsible for the financing of a new plant and increasing capacity, as well as the increase in treatment quality. That's their responsibility. Verde Santa Fe Wastewater Company will continue to be oversee the operations of the plant itself.
Okay, Councilmember Henry?
Has the developer abandoned all plans to put in their own plant then? Is this a short-term or a long-term solution?
This would be long-term. We look at doing this as a permanent solution for the development itself. Rather than building an actual plant on property there, this would be the solution for the treatment of the effluent that was generated by the 89 and Vine development.
So I'm not quite sure, what does that mean for the city so they're taking over this service for us, and there have been, just known concerns with the plant, various concerns in the past. So, what are your thoughts as far as, at some later point, any liability for the city for them not, some worst case scenario with them not managing or, not meeting their standards, et cetera?
If we'd gone back 2 years, I think this, from my perspective, I would have been very concerned. I think there was a change in ownership of that plant itself a couple years back, and the new owners of the plant now, I think, have ironed out a lot of the problems that previously existed. And they've given us a commitment, at least at this point in time in the discussions, that they're committed to actually bring the plant up to speed to where it'll continuously produce A+ quality water. Based upon my conversations with the owners, I feel pretty comfortable with them. The new owner actually comes from the operations side of the equation, and he's very familiar with the problems that they've had in the past. So I feel pretty comfortable with it at this point in time. There's still a lot of hurdles that have to be overcome with this. I mean, the Arizona Corporation Commission is going to have to approve this, and as well as ADEQ, as well as NACOG, and a few others. So there's still a lot of details that have to be ironed out, and assurances made in order to make sure that we do have that as good a guarantee as we possibly can to move forward with this.
I just had two
Please
real
go ahead.
brief. One, I'm assuming that these, the numbers are enough for the entire proposed development. And then the second, because the letter of intent discusses both or either a new plant or additions to the current plant, do you have an idea of which is more likely? Will they do a new plant, or do you think it's more likely they'll just add on?
At this stage of the game, from our standpoint and from the developer standpoint, we're looking at potentially a new replacement plant for what's there. The plant that is there is part of the problem that they've had with it. It's a really old design. It's subterranean. It's actually below ground surface, which creates some problems in and of itself. We've asked them to look at, in the actual development of a new plant there, some of the newer technologies like the MBR technologies that are out there. They're very nice. They're ultrafiltration, much easier to operate and much more consistent in their operations as opposed to the activated sludge like is the old school way of treating effluent.
And then the capacity? The numbers are more than sufficient in your opinion?
They should be, yes. I mean, we haven't got the final numbers yet, but at least the preliminary numbers that we put together, working with the developer and well as the numbers that we provided them, we will iron those out and get a hard number. But yeah, right now the numbers look fairly decent based upon the current plan for the development that they're proposing.
Okay. Any other questions from council?
Question?
Yes.
That was my same question. Is that build out, that should be sufficient? Second question, that's correct?
What?
At build out, this plant would be sufficient or an additional, whatever you have to do?
Yes.
Okay. Second question is, first of all, we're fortunate to have Sunbelt. They have an excellent reputation. Whose decision would it be to add a new plant or add on? If we need a new plant or an additional plant, whose decision is that?
I'm probably not communicating very well here. The current plant that's there would serve as like an initial first phase, you know, because it gives them, there's some sufficient capacity in there at this point in time that they could actually utilize it with very few modifications in order to address some of the early stages inflows from the development. While a new plant would be constructed potentially to take place of the one that's currently there. We haven't ironed out all the details yet as to how that will take place. I mean, there could be a completely brand new replacement plant that would have that would be able to treat all the capacity from the development as well as from Verde Santa Fe. Or they could utilize what's there currently and throw on several different treatment trains alongside that to treat the additional capacity. That hasn't been worked out yet. There's just a commitment on the part of both the developer and the owners and from us that we would all work together to come up with a solution that would address the total capacity at build out of both Verde Santa Fe as well as 89 and Vine.
Right, but back to the original question, whose decision is that? Do they have to build it? Do we have to build it? Do we have to approve it? How does that work?
Ultimately, we'd be involved in the decision-making process. We'd have review authority over that, as would the developer themselves. I think it'd be a three-way agreement with regards to how that would ultimately come out. But we all have input into the say of what type of plant that goes in there. and how large of a plant.
I did have a
Please, yeah.
So if it were a new plant, would it be at the same, because the city's still responsible for the lines to, from, I'm assuming.
We would be responsible for the collection site in 89 and Vine only, and it would be until it connects into the Verde Santa Fe system, and that's where our responsibility would end at that point in time.
So then we shouldn't care really about if they located to a different, I don't know if they have any spare property for a new plant at a different location.
They have sufficient property right there at the location of the existing one to build it right there on site.
Okay, all right.
I think that's it.
No problem.
Any other questions from council, concerns, thoughts, epiphanies? No? Okay. Mr.
Well, I was just going to say, and the Sunbelt developers here, I'm
Right.
sure they could be
Yeah.
happy to answer any direct questions or give you a quick overview.
Okay. Well, I don't know your name, sir, from Sunbelt, but if you wouldn't mind, oh, there's two gentlemen. If you wouldn't mind, you're more than welcome to come up and,
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, my name is Sean Walters with Sunbelt Holdings. Address is 6720 North Scottsdale Road in Scottsdale. So again, thank you very much for hearing us. I hope this is the first of many times I get to address the council. We, as Tom's indicated, we're under option with the owner of the property 89 and Vine. We have been for quite some time. We've been working with staff on the project. We've been working a lot with Tom on the first issue, which is really the infrastructure, right? So how do we serve the necessary infrastructure for the project? We have been through a number of iterations of how to do that. As we were talking earlier today, I think we're probably on either 4.0 version or 5.0 version on how to make this work. What really happened is, to give you a little bit of history on it, what really happened is the golf course at Agave Highlands, it's called, came up for sale. One of the conversations we'd been having over time is in building a new plant on the property at 89 and Vine, we needed a place to put the effluent, frankly. And the logical choice for that was the golf course across the street, because right now, Verde Santa Fe does not generate enough effluent from the plant. They generate about 100,000 gallons a day. It's not enough to satisfy the needs of the golf course, so it was a logical place for the effluent. As we started working through that process, we realized the course was up for sale. We went in and talked with the sellers there, and really what it came down to is we started putting two and two together was, if we had the ability to not only increase the effluent going into the existing plant, but to increase the quality of the effluent coming out of the wastewater going in, increase the quality of the effluent coming out of the plant, it could really be a win for all the parties involved, because the golf course suffers a little bit from the fact that the effluent quality is B+. It's harder on the heads, it's harder on the turf, it doesn't function as well, and they don't get enough of it. So as Tom said, they're augmenting with groundwater, which is less than ideal, obviously. So what we're looking at doing, and again, what the LOI does is it gives us an indication that we're hopefully all on the same page to move forward, the three parties. So we've met a number of times with Tom and talked about it. We've met with the owner of the wastewater treatment plant. They actually put the draft of the agreement together. We commented briefly on it, as did Tom. But effectively, what we would look to do, them being a private utility, we do a fair amount of work around the state with private utilities. So what ends up happening is effectively we fund the design or manage the design subject to their approval, and then we fund the construction the same way. But really what we look at doing is, and again, I will temper this just by saying we don't have any plans yet. We haven't gone to that level. But effectively, the old plant, I think, is I think we can say it's old. It could use upgrades. What we would look at doing is putting in a new plant beside it while the one was operational, and then when the new plant was ready, we would transfer the flows to the new plant, decommission the old plant. And then that new plant would either have it would have certainly sufficient capacity for Verde Santa Fe and for initial phases of our project. And then we'd either expand that or add another train or do something else to capture the full amount of the flow from the project. That's the concept we've come up with. So I think, again, while we were excited to talk about it with Tom, is it really is kind of a win-win. I mean, I think the Verde Santa Fe group, as Tom said, at times there's been some issues, as I understand it, I don't know personally, with the effluent, but it gives them a better quality effluent coming out regardless. It benefits the golf course. They can reduce pumping of groundwater. They get a higher quality of effluent and more of it. And it gives us the opportunity to not duplicate a plant at a plant site north of Cornville within, 3/4 of a mile, half a mile of an existing plant that's permitted for the capacity we need ultimately, and is in operation. So sometimes you stumble upon these things that seem to work for everybody. I think this appears to at this point, and we're excited about the opportunity to explore it further. And that's what we've kind of come forward with tonight to hopefully get support for.
Okay, very good. Any questions for Mr. Walters from council? No. Okay, thank you, sir,
All right,
for being
thank
here.
you.
All right. Well, I agree with Councilmember Wildon. I think we're lucky to have Sunbelt here. I know that this project has been full of fits and starts for a number of years. And since the city of Cottonwood annexed it, I think we've done an excellent job of chiseling the project down into something that's more palatable to our community. The number of homes has been reduced. The golf course, which was originally proposed when it was in county, was eliminated when it came to the city. So I think we've done a great job at getting this project more in line with our community values. And I'm glad that we're getting creative too in ways to manage the effluent. I think it'd be a great benefit to our regional aquifer if we got that golf course off groundwater. I think that's really important. My biggest concern with this, the thing I can't get past though, is just taking the effluent, which I really believe is our most secure water future in Cottonwood, and delivering it outside city limits to the county, to another utility that we don't have any control over. That's really what concerns me the most about this. Again, I know it's a tremendous benefit, and I wouldn't have any heartache if this went through, and if we did get that golf course off of groundwater. But just seeing the way things are going with adjudication, with our water security, with the West in general, it just concerns me to take 500,000 gallons per day, or however much this Verde Santa or 89 and Vine will produce, and not do the best we can to either do direct potable reuse or direct injection right back into the aquifer. So these are my concerns. Yes, sir.
Mr. Mayor, members of council, if I may, this doesn't really prevent us from doing that. That's the nice thing about this, is that when we looked at actually constructing a new plant on site, we were running up against some of the same issues that we ran into with Riverfront, and that is, where are we going to put the effluent? Where are we going to dispose? How are we going to dispose of it? And one of the things that we kept hammering the developers that have come and gone over the years was go down to the golf course and see if you can sell the effluent to them. I mean, that's probably the easiest way to dispose of it. But even there, you've got a seasonal aspect of that disposal option. So there's always that potential, especially in the winter months, when your demand numbers go down, that we could actually, as the city approached the wastewater treatment plant there, and say, look, let's work together to come up with a solution for disposing of that in a more beneficial way during the winter months. We could potentially do recharge in the winter of some of that excess or effluent when they get towards build out, of course, that might be available. So that those options are still there, and I can almost guarantee you that anybody that owns that plant is going to be looking at any kind of an option that they can to dispose of that effluent in any way they potentially can, especially if there's no cost to them. So I think that we're not eliminated from those options like direct injection for recharge or even direct potable reuse at some point in time in the future. I don't think we're eliminated from actually doing that. But at least on the front end, I think this is a win-win for everybody at this point in time.
I understand that. I think what concerns me though is that with this three-party agreement, it's just a bit clunky in who's really going to take the lead on direct injection. I think the burden I fear would be placed on the city, because I think the utility, being a private utility, is more likely going to do what is cheapest for their ratepayers, not necessarily what's best for the environment and for the longevity of the municipality. That's what concerns me. So I think ultimately the city would be having to step in and fund a private utility to make sure that things are done in a manner that secures our water future going forward. But without owning that utility, which...
Mr. Mayor, members of council, with regards to direct potable reuse, you're absolutely right. With regards to recharge, we would have to do that anyways. I mean, we would be responsible for actually putting in the injection well, doing the studies, whether we own the utility or not. So that cost would be upon us no matter what, whether we owned it or not.
Right.
So there's really no difference there. On the direct potable reuse side, that's a little different because now you're getting engaged in the actual operation of the wastewater treatment plant. So there, from that perspective, yeah, it would be basically a private-public partnership that would have to come into play in order to make that happen. But with regards to recharge, no. We could just go and say, look, we're going to put an injection well, and during the winter months when you don't have a demand for the effluent or the reclaimed water, we would more than be happy to put in the infrastructure to do the recharge.
All right. But without owning the utility, we would not be able to recoup our costs.
No.
Okay.
Well, actually we would, because it will be a pass-through on the cost that they charge us for treatment of the wastewater. So we could add a fee on top of that potentially to offset the cost for recharge if that was something we wanted to do. I mean, the potential is there.
Okay.
Because we still will be billing our customers within the 89 and Vine subdivision.
Okay.
If that helps.
I actually agree with the mayor that this is probably something that should be addressed and thought now, because this is something that we might regret 20 years down the road if we don't have at least language, some sort of an option already. And I understand this is a letter of intent, but if we are moving forward with more binding agreements and negotiations, I do think, because here we have a private water company, and again, this is a potentially valuable resource that we can't quantify as far as right now, just with what that value that we are, what's exactly in play. So this is a win-win for the developer and for the private water company. It is a temporary win, in my opinion, for Cottonwood. I don't believe that it is potentially not a long-term win for us. We're saving upfront costs with our infrastructure, significant amounts, but at what cost to our future residents? So personally, I think that Mayor has raised some very good long-term points. That's why I was asking if this is a long-term or a short-term solution for the developer. And as it appears to be a long-term solution, I think that we should have a larger voice in the negotiation of what does happen to that effluent and put in some parameters now where we have some leverage.
And I would completely agree with you. And I think when we get to the point where we're actually having formalized agreements in place, that we would certainly, or ensure that we make sure that we've got language in those agreements that addresses these exact issues that have been brought up with regards to direct potable reuse and recharge.
Councilmember Carrat?
I just have a question. If at some point we go to direct potable use, would we have the option to buy out their sewer plant and then we can do whatever it is we're going to do with it?
Absolutely.
I'm sure.
Everything's for sale. I mean, right price, everything's for sale. So, yes, I mean, that's always an option. Several years back, we were actually informally approached about potentially buying the plant out when they were having all kinds of problems. And they actually were purchased by another individual, though, at that point in time, because we didn't have an interest in it because of all the problems that they had with that system out there. I would not want to buy that system that they have currently there because it just doesn't function properly. But if you had a nice MBR system out there, ultrafiltration system, which are very easy to operate. They're more automated than the activated sludge type things, which takes a little more artwork than anything else to operate them. Yeah, it'd be very valuable.
Have there been any discussions about the city moving towards purchase at this point on the front end, or at least being guaranteed some ownership in that facility as it's rehabbed or rebuilt or built new by Sunbelt?
We've not had that discussion at this point in time. We have not.
Mm-hmm. Okay. All right.
Is
Counsel,
there,
go
I
ahead.
just had a question. Is this, how time sensitive is this matter? Because I think, I mean, this is information, and I don't know that this letter of intent was approved by our attorney.
Yes, it was.
It was approved. So then when there's language about subject to, or we're being asked to approve it subject to approval of the final form, are there still proposed revisions to this letter?
Possibly.
So
Possibly.
if this isn't as time sensitive, are we able to perhaps have additional discussion, analysis, and perhaps see the final form with any proposed additions?
This is a rather time-sensitive issue, simply from the standpoint that the developer is in escrow right now on the golf course. And that's, I'll ask you to come in.
Can I maybe
Yeah, sure.
Sure, please.
Sure, thank you. Okay, Mr. Mayor, members of the council, I think to maybe put it in perspective, I think what we are looking for, so we requested the opportunity to bring a letter of intent forward. And the idea was, what we wanted to understand is we are in escrow to purchase the golf course, as I said. We have some timelines on that. If this isn't a solution for us, we don't really have a need to own and operate the golf course. If it's something that effectively works to kind of, you know, from our standpoint, kind of complete the cycle of water, if you will, for the community, it's interesting and valuable to us. So I think when it comes down to, again, I can't speak for the utility. It's a tri-party agreement. I can only speak on our behalf. But what I would tell you in my discussions with Tom, if we make an assumption that we're 3 years away from selling our first home, if we just make that assumption, and I think we can make another assumption that 75% of the effluent generated at build out of the community would be used on the golf course, right? So it would fully, replace groundwater at that point on the golf course. It really gives us kind of a 10-year window before we potentially are even dealing with any excess effluent, just to start with. I think, so what we're trying to understand, I guess from our standpoint, is there desire to move forward with this concept as opposed to building a separate plant on the property? And I think, there's a lot of details to be worked out outside the letter of intent. I think the letter of intent addresses it, but there's a number of agreements that need to be put into place and established and gone through in order to, secure the design and construction of a multi-million-dollar plant. So I think what we requested and what we're asking for sooner rather than later is to get some input that says either the concept is an interesting concept for us and we're supportive of it, assuming, certain criteria can be established in the future agreements, or this concept is not interesting to us for whatever reason, and we'd prefer not to, that you didn't move forward in that direction, right? And I think the LOI has a lot of disclaimers about it's non-binding. And so again, what I'm looking to hear tonight is hopefully hey, it's a good concept. Why don't you go? We have some concerns with regard to the effluent. We'd like the 3 members of the group to get that figured out. Or, we have a lot of reservations with this. We prefer to see a plant in the city. We prefer that we took a different route, and then that gives us the information we need to move forward. And again, I just want to emphasize and reiterate, I guess, that the reason we've ended up with this proposed solution is because it's much more conducive to getting things moving, and I think a good solution all around than going through the process of starting the permitting process for a brand new plant in the city. It's going to be much more time sensitive, I think, and have much less certainty than we have today with an existing permanent plant site. So that was kind of the logic behind it. I don't know if that's helpful, but that's what we're trying to achieve tonight, knowing there's a lot of details. We have a lot of details on our side too.
Sure.
That need to get worked out.
Sure. And Mr. Walters, I don't mean to impede progress in any way, shape, or form. I'm super pumped that we're finally getting some real traction over there, and we do want to be a partner with you as we move forward with this. We need those houses years ago. We need them really bad, and we know that. So, we want to help you be successful. But again, I love the concept. I love the idea of getting groundwater, to remove groundwater from the golf course and using effluent. These are all great. My real biggest sticking point is that the city doesn't own that utility.
Right.
That's what concerns me. So if we can move forward with a letter of intent that still allows room to negotiate some way that the city will have some ownership or control over that utility, then I can't speak for anyone but myself up here, but that would make me feel way more comfortable.
And I can't speak for anyone other than myself, unfortunately, either, but I do think it's within the realm of the conversations we've been having, the tri-party, to introduce the concept of what to do with excess effluent. I don't see that as outside the range. So I understand, absolutely. So.
Yes, please, of course.
Mr. Walters, if I understand what you were saying a few moments ago, your company is in the process of possibly buying Verde Santa Fe Golf Course, is that correct?
That's correct.
If you were to purchase the golf course, would you be annexing that or requesting annexation into the city, or would you stay in the county with the course?
Mr. Mayor, Councilmember Hulse, we are not contemplating annexation of any property into the city.
Okay.
And what you're asking tonight is just that you would like us to say, go forward, we're not committing to anything, but we would be interested in reviewing whatever it is that you folks come up with. Is that correct?
I think that's largely correct. I think it's really the concept of, again, I think the LOI outlines a concept of a bulk bulk wastewater agreement that would be entered into. If the city was open to entering into a bulk wastewater agreement with the Verde Santa Fe wastewater treatment plant, I think, and the terms of which would obviously need to be negotiated. And then in that case, we would be interested in moving forward with the same company to fund design and construction of a plant that could serve the community. Is that fair? I want to make sure I understand what I'm saying, but I think that's...
Thank you.
Yeah, okay. Yep. Anything else, Council?
I don't have any questions. I appreciate the additional follow-up and the, especially Mr. Walters, you being here tonight and the time and investment that you've made. I think that we have two private parties that are making significant financial decisions for themselves in the short term. They need immediate answers from the city. And these immediate answers are things that potentially have significant impact on the city in the long term. And just from the information that I have tonight, I don't believe the city has strategically evaluated all of the future implications to the city for me to be able to make a decision on this tonight.
Okay. Council, how do you feel about moving forward on this?
If there's some way to kind of skirt, because we're skirting the issue, I think. If there's some way to put in the language, even by the agreeing with this and adding something, I'm definitely in favor of the proposal, but what the future is what I'm concerned with as well. So how do we fix that is probably my question.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Well, if I'm understanding the whole thing correctly, is that the negotiations for the upcoming contracts would happen later, but they need to know whether or not we even want to go this way before we talk about all that. So this isn't a night to negotiate all the details, right? Right. So, I mean, it sounds like, because we've waited a long time to move forward with this project, that this would be the quickest way to move forward, but then the city would have the ability to negotiate for what we think would be in our best interest as we move along. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Yeah. Then I, for one, would be in favor of moving forward.
Okay.
So some of the big picture items that haven't been explored, the mayor asked, have we even discussed buying the plant ourselves? So there are additional items that, I mean, again, to me, I don't know that that's necessarily a good idea, but isn't that another solution to this problem?
Mr. Mayor, Councilmember Henry, we have actually thought about that, and we just have an opportunity to not have to manage a plant. So, go ahead, Tom.
Right now, in the condition that that plant is in right now, I would not want to buy that plant.
Right, but if we bought it, then we would be negotiating with the developer to have them pay for the design and improvements and upgrades, and we'd be passing that cost on. So in the short term, we don't want the plant, but in the long term, to me, this might be a short-sighted decision.
Potentially.
Mr. Mayor, Councilmember Henry, that plant services an unincorporated area of the city, and I don't know that we would want to get into the business of handling the wastewater services for the unincorporated areas. It would be a big purchase, those kinds of things. What I'm hearing tonight is really the affluent. What are we going to do with the leftover? And as the mayor said, it's important that the city own the affluent so that we can use it for the best possible reasons. Adjudication comes to mind to make sure that we have our water resources for the development of the city. I don't think this plan, at least at this level, changes that. I think that for the environment, it reduces the amount of withdrawal from our aquifer. So this will supplant water currently being withdrawn from the well, and it will be most of the water, 75%, most of the water affluent produced by this project. So most of it will do what I believe council wants us to do, which is to use less groundwater for at least as long as the golf course is in maintenance. So I think that is meets the strategic objectives of the city council, the way I understand it. And then the leftover, what do we have left in the wintertime and we're not being used? I think that's a good question. I think as Mr. Whitmer pointed out, if we want to inject, we still have that option. We would bring it back because they'll need something to do. They'll need a place to put that affluent, that discharge. So I think that negotiations can still happen in the long future. To be honest with you, if the plant is operated and owned by someone other than the city and services unincorporated areas, I'm okay with that. They still have to meet all the standards, A+, that's what their permit is going to be, ADQ, all the governing agencies are going to handle that. The permitting process to open a new plant takes a while and would delay some of this development from happening. So I think this is a way to get to the same outcome, high quality discharge water, good for the environment, less water coming out of the ground, and a lot of people to be served. But I'm not minimizing us not owning the water because that is a big deal. We have less control, but I think those kind of details can be worked out in the future when we come back with an actual agreement. This is, are we okay with, and some of you may not be, this is at the pleasure of council, with this plant being built on the other side. If council says no, that they would prefer it to be on inside the city limits on the new project, then we'll take that direction and move forward with that. But over the few years Tom has been in charge of the utility department and working with this team, with Sunbelt, we have looked at many options, Vaulton Hall. We've worked with the Catholic Church about possibly partnering with them in different ways. So this is just, as was said tonight, was the latest plan that we actually think can get this project off the ground. Again, if it pleases council, I'm not trying to push it. But as you guys know, this project has been on the books since the 90s? 80s. And nobody's been able to make it happen. Starting wastewater from scratch is very difficult, not impossible, but very expensive. And this just seems to be a way that all the parties so far have at least been interested in entertaining. Again, I do think in the future, when we bring back a contract, when we bring back an agreement, spelling out who has the say in that affluent can be worked out, and council will have a say at that time.
Okay, so we can negotiate to own the effluent that own the wastewater from 89 and Vine, own the processed effluent.
We can negotiate everything. So That's not a concern to me at this point in time, because I think we can get some sort of agreement that's beneficial to all, also protects us in the long run, gives us some of that flexibility in order to take control and manage that resource at some point in time. As long as that golf course is there, they've got an agreement in place right now where the golf course takes 100% of what they produce. So that will have to be abided by no matter what we do, unless that golf course goes away. If the golf course goes away, they've got to find a disposal option for basically 0.5 MGD a year. That in itself, or not a year, 0.5 MGD, which means they're going to have to find a solution. What are the solutions that are available to them? Recharge is a possibility. Direct potable reuse is a possibility. So those things would all come into play if the golf course were to go away. But until that golf course goes away, there's an agreement in place where they have to use 100% of what is produced by that plant, which means you're reducing the amount of groundwater that you're pumping significantly by whatever the demand is of the golf course.
Okay.
And any excess, yeah, that's where we would do our negotiations, try and work into something where we can get some guaranteed use of any residual or excess effluent that's generated by that plant.
Okay.
Sure. I was just going to say, Mr. Mayor, members of the council, what if we just took the agreement back? Because I feel a little disingenuous talking on behalf of the utility company that's not here tonight, right? So I wouldn't want to be in a situation where I was representing something that they hadn't agreed to, but we could take this back. We could have some conversations with them about the effluent, because I don't think we've done that yet, right? And we could ask them and make sure that they didn't have a concern with it. I mean, I would prefer that I understood that we either had kind of collective buy-in, because again, what's going to happen is these future agreements are going to come forward, and I wouldn't want to get somewhere down the road and find out that, well, we made significant investments with, based on the fact that we understood something was going to happen, and then when we got way down the road, we found out that it was something we should have answered back. I think I'd be comfortable with that if you are.
I'm comfortable with it. The only issue we have right now is I've read through the agreement between the golf course and the Verde Santa Fe wastewater treatment plant. And right now the agreement is 100%. They have to take everything they produced. So that's kind of the limiting factor on what would be even available for reuse, other than for offsetting groundwater pumping at this point in time.
Okay. Listen, the last thing we want to do, Mr. Walters, is derail the discussion tonight. And I know that this may be coming out of left field. It's always hard to know how 6, because Matthews is not here, folks feel about a particular agreement, especially one as complicated as this is potentially. But my point is, if you can wait, I think that might answer some questions for council. And the last thing we want to do is set you up to fail at a future meeting. And you're investing a lot of time and money into this. So I think if we can pause, we can get this back in front of council at the next regularly scheduled meeting, which...
And Mayor, I
September
actually have
6th.
another question too. If at that meeting we can, because I thought Mr. Whitmer just said that the current agreement requires the 100% of the effluent. So if, that's an important piece of that discussion. So if we can have some additional discussion on that, please, at the next meeting.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, that works fine for me. Like I said, we're happy to have the discussion. We're excited to be moving forward, but we want to make sure that we don't get out of our ski tips as well. And so I think for us to be able to answer the questions collectively and make sure that, again, we understand that we have clear direction or don't, that's helpful too, in making our decision. That would be great.
Okay. Have we made enough of our points clear tonight to give some direction on how to move forward with this?
Yes, Mr. Mayor.
Okay.
And the next meeting will be September 6th, so it's 3 weeks away? Okay.
Is that acceptable?
Sure.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. All right, then as long as you've got the information that you need from council, we can have discussion beyond this if necessary.
Mr. Mayor, if I can ask for a question, and I don't know the owners of the current system, but it sounds like it would be wise for them to be present at this next meeting as well.
Absolutely.
Is that what I've heard?
Well, part of that depends. So if the current agreement requires 100% of the effluent to be used at the golf course, and you're buying the golf course, and it's, it sounds as though that might be something for you two to be really looking at, and less so the treatment plant, but I haven't seen that agreement, so I can't speak to that.
Well, the way it stands now is that any excess effluent, the Verde Santa Fe treatment, the private utility needs to dispose of it in some way. And I think our concern as council, at least some of council, is we want to have some more ownership of that effluent. We want to know where it's disposed, how it's disposed, not just leave it up to a private utility to decide the cheapest and most easiest way to dispose of that effluent.
Mr. Mayor, Mr. Mayor, Councilmember, but just so above board, the current plan, they're in escrow to buy the golf course, and they're going to water that golf course with the effluent from this plant. Right. That is the plan. The goal is to reduce the pumping from the well, and so, I mean, I guess that could change. That'll be up to them, but just know that is the plan, is to reduce well pumping.
Right.
Which, and I don't know if Tom explained that in great detail, but our well is nearby, and so that actually has a very positive effect on because we do supply the water to Verde Santa Fe, and that would have if they use that well less, that helps us and our situation out at Verde Santa Fe. So there is that positive back there. Mr. Whitmer, is that correct?
Yes, that is correct. I mean, this year has been a really tough year for us. Mm-hmm. For whatever reason, they've had to pump 24/7 with their well this summer. We've been having to pump 24/7, which is the first time we've ever had to pump 24/7 from our well in order to meet the demands of Verde Santa Fe. And even with that, we're just holding our own at Verde Santa Fe. And both wells pumping synonymously at the same time from the same source, it's causing an impact on both wells. Sure. And both of their production rates are way down from what they normally are.
And I think that part is clear. I think everything, even the mayor, and I am interested in that, even had a community member reach out just recently about the water concerns at Verde Santa Fe. And this does seem that it would possibly positively impact that. My biggest concern, to echo the mayor, is just addressing the effluent, and if it is possible to address that even initially in the letter of intent, that would personally make me feel better moving forward with the more specific negotiations later, and I appreciate you offering that. Thank you again.
Maybe I'll confuse the matters a little more, but I'll try not to. Again, the issue, so there are a number of agreements in place related to the golf course and the wastewater treatment plant that go back 25 or 30 years. And because it was all kind of designed as a system. So there are requirements that, as Tom stated, there are requirements that the golf course utilize the effluent that comes out of the plant. At the same time, the use of water on a golf course varies considerably by season. So during the winter, you'll have a lot less water use than you do during the summer. Currently, the effluent that's produced is pretty consistent in the plant. It's about 100,000 gallons a day. The amount of water that the golf course needs fluctuates from, somewhere north of that in the 200,000 gallon a day range up to, say, 500,000 gallons a day. So what happens is in the summer, in the winter, they don't run the well very much. In the summer, they run the well consistently to augment that water supply. So in kind of the further complicated, and I think the tie into one of the points Tom was making, the golf course well and the city also have an agreement where the city can utilize the golf course well when it needs additional capacity. Okay. So in this summer, what happened was both wells were running. Both users needed their wells at 100% capacity, and there wasn't the ability to transfer water back and forth. So again, I guess the point I try to make is that the entire system is interrelated, and that's how we've tried to look at it. And as I said earlier, with kind of the circle of water use, it's all kind of in that together. And so, I think as civil engineer, a lot of us are at Sunbelt, I think what we've tried to do is come up with something that, while not finalized necessarily, there's details to be worked out and not perfect, it's a significant upgrade to the water system than what exists today. And hopefully we can demonstrate that point. I believe that that's the case. And we can take some additional time to do that. But I did want to explain it's even more complicated than we kind of initially put out. And so, we spent a lot of time talking this summer with regard to the well that's out at Verde Santa Fe. How do we help and how do we get additional water to the city to meet the needs of the customers? So, we view it as a situation where we are all in partnership and we're in this together, and that's how we look at things. So we have to look at things when you're doing a master plan that takes 10 or 15 years. You have to be in partnership with everybody. We believe that this is a really positive step in the right direction, and pieces need to be worked out. We want to make sure, everybody feels comfortable about it, if that's the case going in. It's really important to us.
Okay. All right, excellent. Well, I think we're very close to an agreement.
Right.
I think really the biggest sticking point is the excess effluent, what we do with it. Yeah.
And I'm also in favor of what's been discussed, so I'm
Okay.
good with that.
All right, Mr. Walters, thanks for your patience with us. We're going to see you in 3 weeks. Okay, thank you. All right. Okay, let's go ahead and move on then to item 5, which is request from the city's Parks and Recreation Department to allow for the consumption of alcoholic beverages and for the limited use of glass containers by vendors at Riverfront Park during the Thunder Valley Rally event to be held on September 16th and 17th, 2022. Evening.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and Council. Jack Teal, your Parks and Recreation Director again. So tonight I'm bringing some housekeeping items forward for Thunder Valley Rally. As you guys know, it's a marquee event the city puts on, a large-scale event that requires a lot of planning. And within that planning, there's a couple things within our municipal code that we need to get waived so that way we can hold this event in the fashion that we've been accustomed to. So one of them is currently the no alcohol in the park. So we'd be asking for a waiver of that, so that way we can have our bars there, serve those alcohol. It is a large revenue stream for this event. So it's something that we really want to make sure that we can get approved to move forward with. The other one is glass within the park. And I'd like to specify, this isn't open carry glass. The attendees won't have the opportunity to carry the glass. This would be purely for our vendors in our bar, so that way we can serve wine. So one of the things we've tried to do in all Parks and Recreation events is to include our wine whenever we can. So having that there and available is a priority for us, but they come in glass bottles. So we'd be asking for a waiver of that. Again, it would not be open carry for the general public. It would be handled by our bar staff and our vendors who would be doing that. Along with that, I'd like to just give a brief update on Thunder Valley Rally and see if maybe you guys have any questions we can clear up on your end as we move forward. But is there any questions on the housekeeping items first that I brought forward tonight?
No.
Okay, awesome. So Thunder Valley Rally right now is going really well. If you haven't heard our bands this year, we went back to national entertainment and we've expanded our times. So on Friday night, we have Steven Adler of Guns N' Roses. And then on Saturday night, we've got Mark Slaughter coming in. So large, big national acts that we're hoping draw the big crowds again. You've heard me say over the last couple of years that we have tried to focus the city staff and our time on the event at Riverfront Park. But what we've tried to do is still grow this event and bring back all those other things that we had prior to COVID. So we've done that by leveraging our partnerships with people in the industry. So this year you'll see the return of the poker run. And really that's a dice run that we're working with the American Legion Riders on. So they'll be hosting that Saturday. That'll take you all through town. It'll kick off in Clarkdale actually, and then it drives about a 50-mile loop. One of the benefits of this, working with a local organization here, is it's a dice run for charity. So all the proceeds from that, outside of the payouts for the winners on those, will go into a youth sports scholarship fund. So children who don't have that opportunity to play those youth sports, they'll be able to submit an application through Parks and Recreation. We'll approve that, send that off to the American Legion Riders, and they'll be able to fund that youth sponsorship for one of the programs. Another thing we're working on is a local group who wants to do boxing at the event. So in years past, last year, we condensed our roll on Saturday to just 4 to 10 p.m. What we found out is people wanted to be there earlier. People wanted things to do in the daytime. Well, it goes back to my original statement of we've tried to condense our city staff role of what we're asked to do at that event. So working with partners, we've identified this kickboxing group who wants to put on a boxing event at Thunder Valley Rally. So we're working with them to have that there hosted throughout the day. So it gives another daytime activity for them to do that the city doesn't have to operate those costs. So it's all on them as part of the event that we get our guests and our ticket holders able to do. The last thing is we're working with a gentleman out of Tucson to do a bike contest, more or less. It's a no class bike contest. So you'll be able to register your bike there on site. The winner will receive, top 3 winners will receive an award, and the top winner will actually get a feature in Outlaw Biker magazine as well. So we're working with partners all around the state to make this event bigger, to grow it, while also minimizing and reducing the role that the city has to take, so we can focus on what is important at that event and making sure that we do so in a fiscally responsible way. So it's not just about what we're doing, though, at the event. It's about what happens in the community. So one of the things we don't have is on-site camping. So I was calling around to see what the accommodations are looking like throughout the city right now. Dead Horse is full. Dead Horse is always full no matter what weekend you're going on, so that's not a surprise to anybody. But our hotel partners, our accommodation partners here in town are doing really well. So Best Western, completely sold out for the weekend. I was just speaking with DK Green from the new hotel that just went in. They're sold out that weekend. The Super 8 in town, they have availability, but even rooms at our Super 8 are going for $269 a night. So the accommodations locally are doing really well here at the tavern. Friday night, they've got some availability, but Saturday night, they're getting full. And that's a common theme. Saturday is more full than our Friday nights, but all in all, the event's going really well. We're about 100% over where we were in advanced ticket sales this time last year, so that's good for us. And if you haven't seen our marketing, we've been working with Trisha and a lot of our marketing partners. We're all over the place. So Law Tigers, even though they gave us $13,000 cash, they're giving us about $7,000 in marketing too. So they've had TV opportunities. They've got radio going out throughout the entire state. Those are all in efforts to help the event grow that are no cost to the city. Right now we have just shy of $30,000 cash. It's $29,500 from sponsorship. And then we're bringing in all of our revenues for the ticket sales and all that as well. So all in all, it's shaping up to be a really good event. We're going to bring it back to the national level and see what it does. But is there any questions about the event I might be able to answer for council?
Questions for Mr. Teal? No? All right. Good deal. Ready for a motion?
Yes, sir.
Okay. I'll go ahead and motion then to approve alcohol consumption in glass containers at Riverfront Park during the 2022 Thunder Valley Rally, notwithstanding any city rule, regulation, or policy to the contrary.
Second.
Okay, Mayor made the motion. Did I make that right? I did, right? Yeah, Mayor made the motion. Councilmember Karat seconded it. Roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Henry,
Yes.
Councilmember Holes,
Yes.
Councilmember Karat,
Yes.
Councilmember Wilden,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Naren,
Yes.
and Mayor Linsky,
Yes.
and the motion carries.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, council.
All right. Let's move on then to item 6, which is discussion and direction to staff regarding the recruitment, selection, and hiring process for a new city manager.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I know everyone in this room pretty much knows that our city manager is leaving. Most of us are very sad about it, including myself.
Most, but not all.
sad. So congratulations. on
Thank you. If I can add, Amanda, real quick. So I am in negotiations with the contract. Their council is scheduled to review and hopefully approve our contract that I've been negotiating with staff next Monday. So I guess there's still hope for some of you if you wanted to make a phone call. But council hasn't acted on it yet. We're just at the staff level.
So more than likely, our city manager is leaving us. So that vacancy would likely happen in November. So we're here tonight to discuss a potential recruitment plan moving forward so we can hopefully fill the vacancy as soon as possible and eliminate or shorten a gap between city managers. That being said, as a reminder, we may have a gap between city managers, and council should be thinking about an interim city manager and what that looks like in the future if we need it. Right. But that's not something we need to decide on or discuss tonight. With any executive recruitment, this process will be fairly extensive. There's basically two ways we can move forward. You can either elect to contract with an executive recruitment firm, or we can elect to do it in-house. So I did have a question about what we did last time, so I do want to do a brief synopsis of that so everyone has the same information. So during the last recruitment, the city used the NOVAC group to conduct our process. So in that process, the NOVAC group met with council to determine their direction and priorities first, then used their national network to post and solicit applications. They accepted and screened about 100 applications last time. They then narrowed it down to the top 11 or 12 candidates for council to review. They then facilitated council's discussion on the top applicants. They prepared press releases regarding the process and the top candidates. They prepared interview questions and facilitated the interview process as a whole. They gave feedback from other interview groups to council, facilitated council's final discussion on the matter, helped in making an offer to the final applicant, and then used our choice of an external attorney to negotiate the actual contract, and then notified applicants of their status throughout the process. So in that, my role was that I prepared council communications for them. I reserved rooms, organized our interview groups, got any food or drinks we needed for the process, prepared surveys for the outside stakeholders, assisted in the interview process, of course, and then once we hired Ron, helped him kind of get on board and get the information that he needs. So clearly the previous selection was successful for a little while. We're sad. So, as you also know, we are recruiting internally for the city attorney position right now. So our process, if we would do this internally, would be fairly similar. I've attached a similar document with a similar plan. Right now we have 6 applications. We got 1 extra. So even though you can't compare the positions themselves, because the city attorney position is probably not as widely sought after as the city manager position would be, the process itself would be similar. So I have prepared some documents for you to review. I think you've seen pretty much all of them in your packets. And I'm happy to follow direction either way. So if you do wish to use an executive recruitment firm, I would look for options through cooperative purchasing, so we can still move fast either way. And then, of course, I've prepared things for you to look at if you want to do it in-house. So in general, I want to be very transparent with everyone. If you did do a recruitment firm, it would probably be about $25,000 to $30,000. And the benefit of using them is basically their network and their time. So I can and will do the recruitment, no problem. But like I said, I just want to be transparent. I don't necessarily have the exact same network as a national firm would, and we'd be doing this on top of what we're already doing. Mm-hmm. So that's just something council has to take into consideration when they make their decision. So based on our 2 options, what direction does council want to go before we review the documents that I prepared for you?
Council, you want to do this in-house or you want to hire a firm? What are your thoughts?
I don't think that amount of money is out of hand for this position at all. And if it worked last time, hopefully it'll work again. But that's just my immediate thought.
Okay.
I actually think that we could handle this internal, or one of the options in the packet was to try first, and then if we don't get the number of applicants, to then perhaps pivot. We've already discussed we may need an interim, so that would perhaps elongate the process. But my reasons for that are it has not been very long since we did a recruitment process for our city manager. You have also been in your position longer, and you have done high-level administrative recruitments as well. So my first thought would be, let's try in-house, and then if we don't, especially given the number of applicants that we had, 100 is too many. If we did it in-house and we only got 50, and were able to select a good qualified applicant from that, I'd be very happy with that.
Okay.
I'm okay with that. That makes sense.
Okay. Let's hear from all the council on this one. Go ahead.
I'm good with starting in-house, and we can always go outside if we have to, but I think we'll be all right inside.
Okay.
It's acceptable to me.
Okay.
I agree.
Okay. Ditto.
Okay.
I only would say hire a firm just to remove some weight from your shoulders, but I think you can handle it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's look at some of the documents I prepared for you then, so we can make sure we're going in the direction that you want to go in. So I prepared first a timeline document. I think that would be easiest to go over first. So like I mentioned, I feel like this is a fairly expedited timeline. There will be lots of moving parts that kind of happen at the same time, and this timeline does overlap with the city attorney timeline. So they're not, the same things on the same date, but you will be looking at doing the process at the same time, unless council directs me otherwise. So I would plan then on having our posting, as long as we're all on the same page, go out this Friday, I believe, and then have it open for about 3.5 weeks, with the hopes of then being able to have a small committee to have a smaller grouping to bring back to council later in, October. So basically the process there would be, we would close 3.5 weeks, we would review the applications, have a top number of applicants that we would want to get an additional writing sample from, so you guys could see their quality of writing, because the city manager does do quite a bit of that in their process. And then once the writing sample's back, then council would have like a finalized top applicant packet that they would pick up to review and decide from that smaller group who they would want to bring back into in-person interviews. And ideally, that would happen October 21st and 22nd. That should give us a little bit of time to hopefully be able to get someone in and at least have a contract negotiated and know who our next city manager might be, even if they're not here in person to overlap with Ron. There would at least be some certainty on who our city manager might be, so they could have some connection even if Ron wasn't here in person anymore. Does council have any feedback or changes they'd like to see for the timeline?
My thoughts, I might be alone on this. I think I'm a little concerned at the closing date being too soon. I don't know if 1 month is going to be enough to cast a broad enough net. Maybe it is. But I feel like it's a bit rushed, given that we're also looking for an attorney as well, and that we're not having a firm do this for us. Mm-hmm. And I personally, I don't think we're going to be able to get. I don't think there's going to be any overlap between Mr. Corbin and the new manager. I don't think that's going to happen. I really do think we are going to have an interim manager. We're butting right up against the holidays as well, so I really feel like we're going to get a new city manager seated sometime first of the year. Maybe I'm wrong. I'm just trying to be realistic. So I think we can stretch this timeline a bit more to be able to cast a broader net, do a little more thorough search and filter through the applicants a bit more, and just give us a bit of breathing room.
Okay.
But again, this is just my opinion. If council feels like we can push this faster, then we can certainly try.
One of the things you might be able to do too is push back the closing date and then include in a writing sample from everyone. It might deter some people from wanting to apply, but it kind of merges those together and allows people to have more time to apply in the beginning. If you did it that way, you could probably keep the interview process at the same date. If you didn't want to do it that way, we could always just push the interview process and everything else back too.
I think it's a good idea to have them include a writing sample with their application. I think you're right. That would filter out a lot that just are just shooting in the dark. Yeah.
Okay, so I think what we could do then is, if you feel like it's enough time, we could just move our closing date to September 26th and still do a review and have packets ready for council. Maybe not quite the 30th, maybe we bump that a couple days. It would give you less time to review the final packet, but it would give the committee to narrow it down, a little bit of time to review, narrow it down, and then present to council.
And if by some weird chance we don't get enough, well, we can always move it. So it's can be a moving target if it has to be, correct?
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, council can always give a new direction on what they want to see with the process. So if we really don't have very many applicants or qualified applicants, we can always adjust this, and either council can give me direction to come back and discuss new timelines, or you can tell me to, choose something that makes sense based on what we normally do and update you on the new dates.
Mr. Mayor, can I ask for clarification? What date would the announcement close?
It depends. So if we merge them together, I would say September 26th, unless council wishes to have more time.
So that's about 7 weeks, Mayor, from an opening.
Does that seem reasonable? In your professional world with other managers? Does that
Yeah,
seem
8 weeks is common. And I think it's a good point. To make it too short makes it look like maybe it's already predetermined who the applicant is. I've seen that where it's only posted for 2 weeks and you assume that someone's already got the job, and that is not the case here. And so 7 to 8 weeks seems very reasonable to me. We'll know, one of the suggestions I'll have for council is that we review them as they come in. Waiting to have 100 or even 50 applications, especially if we're reviewing writing samples, is burdensome and heavy. So one of the suggestions is, even though you may not make the final determination, that whatever committee is put together, that we review them as they come in. City attorney's easy, 6, so we can get that done, after it closes. But the city manager, I recommend that the subcommittee meet frequently, review the applications, and reach out to the applicant to let them know they're in the process and what the next steps are, so that they know, because someone looking may have several applications in other communities. And if I do say that this will be a gem, somebody would be very fortunate to get this job here. So reaching out to them frequently during the recruitment process will be helpful to keep them in the loop, in the process.
Okay. So are we comfortable with 7 weeks then? Yeah, okay.
Okay. I will adjust that then. Anything else on the timeline? The October 21st, 22nd interview process is, in my mind, it would be similar to the process that we did previously, where we would have 1 day of all of our chosen applicants, and then council would be able to select their top 2 or 3, whatever council would like, to bring back to the second day. It is a Friday, Saturday based on the request from the last time, but it doesn't have to be a Friday, Saturday if that's not what council wants. Or it doesn't have to be 2 days either.
It works for me. Friday, Saturday works. Okay.
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 All right, so the next section here is about our postings.
Can I just back up a second? Because
Sure.
there's one thing you mentioned, which is the selection committee. Are we going to discuss that later, or should we discuss that now?
We can discuss it now, no problem.
Okay. What do you have in mind for that? You said some council members, some staff members.
Yeah, I would say it would, in my opinion, be best if myself and the mayor and maybe one council member. And then council, I think, gets to decide if they want the current city manager to be involved or not, or if they would like to have additional staff.
Okay. Okay. Council, what do you think?
I trust Mr. Corbin. I mean, I think it would be, personally, I think it would be helpful. Some situations, no, that person doesn't need to be involved, but
Okay.
I think there's a lot of background.
Okay. Even after what he did to us? Okay.
I think he knows how we all feel, but I do think he would be good on the selection committee.
Okay. All right. Is there another council member that would like to volunteer? Matthews isn't here, so.
Well, we also, Mr. Mayor, have two, one that is elected and will serve in November. There's always that possibility. And then we have Mr. DeWillis, who will be on the ballot, so has a high probability of being elected to council. So I know that, or assume that council wants to include them in the process. I know she recommended one other. I actually recommend two others. I think this should be heavily influenced by council. So I think the mayor plus two, we stay under any quorum issues with that meeting. And if it doesn't work out with calendaring, I just think we can get through it. But I think it should be heavily influenced by council.
And I agree. I also want the new candidate or the newly elected, or almost to be elected, involved. I just don't want to get any quorum issues. So if there are mayor plus two, we really need to be careful.
I would be on it if that's okay.
Okay.
I'm also willing.
Okay. Great.
Okay.
Great.
Excuse me.
Look, we're making her sick now.
I just should have brought water. It's actually a lot later than I expected it to be.
Well, monitor nobody's used.
It's okay, thank you. Okay, so the next section here is talking about postings. We, of course, always try to utilize any of the free resources available to us. I would definitely recommend that we do some city manager specific postings as well, like ICMA, but just like the city attorney process, I'm open to whatever council would like to see. So if you know of other groups that you really want to see it posted with, I'm happy to do that.
I've been checking. There's a number of cities that are hiring. And it looked like Indeed, a lot of them were on Indeed. Several of them weren't on some of these others.
Mm-hmm. And all of our postings, when we put them on our website, they automatically go out to Indeed.
I don't have any more to add to the list. Definitely ICMA, I'm glad to see that there, but otherwise, no.
Okay. In addition to the proposed selection here for the application, I would say, I would recommend that we ask applicants to submit a cover letter, resume, salary history, and then, of course, as discussed before, a writing sample as well. If there's anything extra council would like to see, we can always include that in there as well.
No, looks good.
Okay. And then we already went over the application review, so I think that we have that narrowed down. We've already talked about the writing sample request as well. Was council generally happy with the interview process that we did previously? Would you like it to be copied? Not exactly, but generally, the groups that we had, community input, having feedback brought back to council from the other groups. Is there anything very specific that you want to make sure is included in our in-person process?
We weren't all here during that process, so if you could just recap, especially for those that are going to be joining us soon, so they know what the process was.
Sure. So the applicants that were invited in did a meet and greet breakfast first before the interviews actually took place. So it was an invitation only group meeting to outside stakeholders. So that included people like our school superintendents, our county leaders there, basically anyone who really the city manager works with fairly closely on a regular basis, so that we could get their feedback as well. They were then sent a survey to provide any feedback back to the consultant. So in this case, it would come back to me, and I would share that with council at the group meeting later in the evening. And then we had, I think we had 2 different interview panels going at the same time. We had council, and then we had a department head group. And then, actually, I think we had 3. I think we had another outside group as well that had some stakeholders on it. So we had multiple groups that then interviewed. They each had a different set of questions. We got feedback from the groups as a whole, and then that was communicated to council when council had their end of the night discussion on who they would like to decide to bring back to the second date. And then the second day, only the top 2 candidates were invited back, and it was much less formal. I think we had a few scripted questions, but generally it was more based on what council experienced the day before. Do they have any concerns or questions about the applicants themselves? Things that they had said, things that were in their background. And then council had a discussion after those interviews to decide who they wanted to move forward with.
Mm-hmm. I liked what we did last time. I thought it was really effective. I think it involved the community a lot more than we've seen in the past, and I think it was great. So if we could stick with that, that'd be good.
Ron, since you've recently gone through this process, is there anything you can think of that might help?
So 2 things that they did that necessarily I didn't do when applying for this job that I thought for the applicant and for the community was helpful. The first was a tour of the community with the mayor, just to have that little bit of background information when I went into the interviews. So when they talked about parts of the neighborhood, I kind of had an idea of at least I had seen it visually. So I found that very helpful. He stayed very neutral. He didn't go into anything in detail that might be policy driven, but he just kind of welcomed me to the community. So I thought that was helpful. We did do a tour here. I believe it was with Supervisor Garrison at the time and some others. And Rudy, I think, gave a tour. So that was helpful. I would encourage that to be included in the process. And I don't know if I think this was helpful for their evaluation for council members. We also had to give a presentation on a topic to the community, and so the community got to listen to it. There was no Q&A necessarily. After the presentation, I walked around and had to answer questions from different community members, volunteers, and it was open to the public. And so they could ask me questions, and I was available for a significant amount of time, even after I left the auditorium, to answer Q&A. I'm assuming, I know they could fill out cards like the survey Amanda was talking about to give feedback to council. I know council members were actually present at that presentation to kind of hear and see and make up their own mind on things. It's painful for the applicant, I'm not going to kid, but it was just another side. As you know, I don't necessarily present as Amanda's doing tonight, but I do speak a lot at council meetings, so it was helpful. That was 2 of the biggest things that they did different. The other was traditional interview questions, multiple panels, and those kinds of things.
Okay. I'm fine giving a tour to the applicants, but I'll need to borrow a car.
Okay.
Please.
We have access to some of those.
That'd be great. I mean, if we want to keep the applicant, it'd be wise to.
Yes.
No problem.
Yes.
Pretty bad, yeah.
Okay. And how does council feel about community presentation? If you didn't want to do it specifically to the community, we could also have a presentation panel instead. It kind of depends on how much you want the community involved in that piece of it.
Well, as one who is always trying to involve the community in what we're doing, I would say that I think we should, and see what kind of turnout we get from the community on that.
Okay. Would this be in addition to the stakeholder? We were thinking about doing a stakeholder panel who would also have an opportunity to engage with the applicants and give feedback to the council. So would this open house be just in addition to?
Yeah, there's still, you could still do the open house or combine the two, that the open house could be after each presentation. They did a very good job of not intermingling the applicants, which was new to me. I've always been stuck in any process of shaking hands with and introducing myself in front of the other applicants. So just whatever pleases council, we can do it separately, we can make it one. There was no formal Q&A, there was no citizen panel. It was only department heads in 2 different panels and then the council. So whatever pleases council. I've been in them all and they all work. And really this is about getting information to you guys to make the decision. So we can do it combined, where they do a presentation and then meet and greet kind of experience individually. We can still do the breakfast in the morning if that pleases council to get the day kicked off, and then they can do presentations later in the day for those that maybe have to work. It's kind of as pleases council.
Council?
I'd like to see us do it together. I mean,
I'm sorry, say it again?
I'd like to see us do it together.
What are they presenting on? I mean, because I don't know that, do you present in your job?
Yeah, so I don't do a whole lot of presenting. It's mostly sitting here like I am tonight answering the Q&A. I do because of my style. I do present to my leadership team. We teach classes and stuff, but it's not a whole lot. The topic I had to choose was my 180-day plan. I had to introduce myself, and then I was given a number of slides to present my 180-day plan for the transition at the new organization. You would have to ask them if it was helpful or not, but it's just another side of me that they got to see.
I like that when you put an actual topic. That sounds great. So thank you. I just wasn't grasping what we were going to be listening to. So
Sure. So would council like to set a specific topic or use that topic or a different topic now?
I think what I'm hearing is that we'd like that topic.
Okay.
Yeah.
And there's lots of time, Mr. Mayor, Council, to make that final decision. That'll come after the group. So we can talk about that when council talks about next steps in selecting the finalist.
Okay. Okay.
Okay. I assume that, like the city attorney position, you will want to advertise the full range of the position. It's listed here. If you don't want to go that route, please let me know. But unlike other city positions, we only have authority to hire up to midpoint without council approval. You are council, so you can hire in at whatever rate you would like. So I would recommend we keep it as the full range.
Agree, yeah.
I also included in your packets a job description and a potential flyer. Did council have any questions on the job description itself, or is there anything council would like to see changed in the job description?
Mr. Corbin, does it describe what you've been doing the last 3.5 years?
He did review it.
Yes. I think we focused on more what we think the future holds versus what I've done, and talked about the organizational structure, priorities for economic development for council, managed growth, but keeping our community small town feel. A lot of stuff I heard at the last strategic plan. So I thought Amanda did a fantastic job in summarizing that. We could list out specific challenges or opportunities that the city has in front of them, but we left it. I didn't do anything. Amanda did all the work. It's pretty general, but it really, we thought, hit on the highlights of economic development, small town feel, moving forward with all the projects we have going on without listing them by name. I thought it did a really good job of setting expectations, but as it pleases council.
I agree, yeah.
Okay. And then I emailed out a potential flyer. It's fairly similar in style as the city attorney flyer looks. Some of the pictures are different. The content, obviously, some is similar or the same, some is different because it's a different position. Is there anything council would like to comment on or see changed, added, not included on the flyer? Obviously, I'll update the closing date and any part of the timeline that needs to be updated based on our conversation, but is there anything council would like to see different about this document.
I had a question on the flyer.
Go ahead, yeah.
So there are, we've got the range and then that the position is exempt, benefit eligible, et cetera. And then we do have the phone allowance, vehicle allowance, as well as negotiables such as reimbursement. I was wondering, because it seems like all of those might be negotiable, and then two, is it prudent to include the latter two or let the applicant, as part of the negotiation, raise those?
We can
points?
definitely leave out part or all of them because they really will follow whatever council's contract with them says. So I believe Ron is really our first person who has had some deferred compensation. We haven't done that in the past. So if we left that off, that would definitely be something that the person could ask for or leave off. It's really up to council on what you want to see. Our phone allowance and our vehicle allowance is fairly standard. So while we can take that off too, I think it's fairly acceptable to leave that on as well, because I highly doubt council would not say that they would get those two items, but the others are definitely more negotiable than I think the first two are. So it's really up to council on whether or not you want any of those parts included in the flyer.
Mr. Mayor, Councilmember Henry, you can remove it, absolutely. I would just include language that other benefits are negotiable at the time of the offer. Deferred comp is a standard benefit to city managers, and if you're looking at a city manager from outside the state, they'll be looking for that because they may not have vested time in Arizona, or they might be in different parts of their career. So it is something city managers look for. This is a deferred comp, but again, most city managers know everything's negotiable, and depending on council how they feel at the time and the qualifications of the applicant, you may not want to overstate your hand early on in the process.
Agreed. Plus, let them negotiate. I mean, that'll show us something right there, their negotiating skills. So
I'm hearing leave those two pieces off and include on their other benefits as negotiated.
It's negotiated, yeah.
I agree with you on the phone and the vehicle. Those are fine to include if that's okay.
Okay, anything else on the flyer? Okay. Generally, that's all I had for you. Is there anything else that council wants to see or make sure they don't see that they saw in the past, or anything you want me to know moving forward to carry out the process for you?
I'm only curious on, the timeline and how we involve the council members that will be joining us.
So last time, we included them in on any of the public process and any of the interview process. I believe when we did the initial review of applications, I think it was technically a public meeting, but I don't think that many people attended. So it's kind of up to you as how early or how late you want them to be involved.
Okay.
They don't really have a vote until towards the end. Well, they won't really unless they're already seated. So I guess it just depends on how early you want their say to be included. If you really want it in the initial applicant review, or if you want it later in the interview process.
Okay. I guess we can decide that at a later date, and maybe even a conversation with the folks that'll be joining us. They'll be joining us in January, right? Is that right?
No, November.
It will be November.
The election results we expect to be delayed just with the new process. So it may be late November before they can be seated, but we hope for them, if I remember correctly, they'll be seated after the election, after you guys canvass the votes.
Okay.
I think we were the day after the election.
Okay.
Yeah, so the two council members already elected should be able to go shortly after the election, because but for the other seat, Mr. DeWillis, assuming he is, receives the votes, it has to go through the canvassing and the other process, so his will take a little longer. So really, it'll be working with Marianne, our city clerk, and the mayor, and figure out. My guess is there's going to be a special meeting after the election to really certify those results.
Okay. All right, well, we've got time on that, but, yeah. Okay.
And I also didn't really touch on this, but I would plan on bringing some proposed interview questions back to you guys when we're doing the application review. So it's kind of all in the same mindset. You can see the applicants that you might be bringing forward and then have input as to what types of questions I bring forward to suggest and then what you actually want to move forward with.
Okay.
And I assumed, because last time we were the list of stakeholders and we're also floated, I'm assuming you'll do the same and we'll be discussing invitees and different things as we progress. Okay, thank you.
Yep. All right.
Mr. Mayor, I know Amanda kind of glossed over it early on, but I am going to plan for transition, and I'm also going to plan for no new hire before I leave. If the contract goes through with Avondale, I'll make myself available as I can, to help with the transition. But my current plan is to move with Mr. Rodriguez, our deputy city manager, because I need to start dumping some of this information in my head and talking about stuff. So council can decide at their pleasure, but that is my current plan, is to begin that transition. I'll use a lot of those 3 months, and he'll need to make his own mental arrangements to take over that responsibility. This is no easy job. And so I just want to make sure that council, I don't want to assume something that council isn't on board with, but my current plan is to begin to transition, over the next 3 months to Mr. Rodriguez, unless there's different direction.
No, that seems the way it should be. He's your deputy city manager, so absolutely, yeah.
That makes the most sense to me as well.
Yep. All right.
Okay.
So feel free to tell him congratulations in the back.
I hear some weeping in the background. All right.
Okay, well, if anything comes up or you have any ideas or feedback, feel free to send them to me. I'm happy to integrate as we go. I try to be flexible, so just let me know if anything comes up.
All right, great. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, last but not least is item 7, resolution number 3148, declaring and adopting the results of the city's primary election held on August 2nd, 2022.
I think that's me.
Yes, it is.
As we all know, the city's primary election was held on August 2nd, and it was for the purpose of nominating or electing candidates to fill the 3 vacancies that are coming up. Per City Ordinance 13, any candidate receiving a majority of all the votes in the primary is automatically elected, and they don't have to go to the general. And Councilmember Wilden and Miss Lisa Duvernay both received sufficient amount of votes, so they're in. They don't have to go to the general. And
congratulations.
Mr. Stephen DeWillis received enough write-in votes to advance to the general, so his name will be on the ballot.
Great.
And tonight we're here for acceptance of the final results from the county.
All right.
So that's what I would ask for.
Very good. Any questions, concerns, council? Nope. Anyone like to make a motion?
Yep. I move to accept the final results of the city's August 2nd, 2022 primary election as submitted by the Yavapai County Elections Department and approve resolution number 3148, declaring and adopting the results of the election.
Second.
All right, Vice Mayor made the motion, Councilmember Holz seconded it. Let's have a roll call vote, please.
All right, Councilmember Henry,
Yes.
Councilmember Holz,
Yes.
Councilmember Karat,
Yes.
Councilmember Wilden,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Naren,
Yes.
and Mayor Linsky,
Yes.
and the motion carries.
All right, great. Let's have you read that resolution by title only, please.
Okay, resolution of the Mayor and City Council of the City of Cottonwood, Yavapai County, Arizona, declaring and adopting the results of the city's primary election held on August 2nd, 2022. Resolution number 3148.
Great, thank you. All right, I will motion to adjourn.
Second.
Mayor made the motion, Vice Mayor seconded it. All in favor?
Aye.
We're adjourned. Thanks, council.